Gas Penix, President of the Nicholas County Board of Education. I'd like to welcome everyone to this special meeting of the board, July the 22nd, 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order at this time. Would you please rise and join the board in a silent reflection? Use this opportunity to reflect on those things for which we had to be thankful, but also to clear our hearts and minds from the business we're going to talk about here today. A moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. Would you please join the board in saluting our country with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, we're on item 3 of this morning's agenda, and we have a work session on school construction and scope of work review with ZMM, Skanska, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Teacher.
I'll pass. We've got enough here. Do we need to have an executive session? Yes, briefly.
For what's the purpose?
Potential litigation.
Potential litigation?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss potential legal situation, litigation?
So moved.
Mr. Amick moves,
Second.
and Mr. Berry seconds. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, we are in executive session at 9:10 p.m. Is there a motion to go out of executive session?
So moved.
Mrs. Kaufman moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Berry seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, we're out of executive session at 9:29 a.m. There was no action taken during the executive session, and there will be no action taken as a result of the executive session. Moving right on, Dr. Tetrick, the work session on school construction and scope of work.
Yes, I have, I'm going to show you a PowerPoint, and of course I will forward that to each of the board members at the conclusion of the meeting. In my PowerPoint, I'm going to go over the background information, the processes that we went through, the way we secured funding, how the funding aligns with our projects. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chris Hanshaw, and then he will go over and talk about current and projected enrollments, as well as current classroom sizes and classroom sizes, numbers of classrooms for each facility at the completion of construction. And again, show all of the classrooms and how we are meeting the 428 agreement. At the conclusion of our presentation, we will turn it over to ZMM, and then they will go into more details of actually showing you the schematics of both school sites, both campus sites, Glade Creek campus and Cherry River campus. So I think you'll find it very informative. I'm excited to be at this point, and feel free to ask as many questions as you may have. And at the conclusion of this presentation, or of this meeting, I will be asking for your approval to move the schematic plans onto the SBA for their initial approval process. And then after that approval process occurs, ZMM will continue to work on design development, meeting with teachers, and finalizing all of the plans. And then once all the plans are finalized, it'll go on through SBA again, and a review will take place to make sure that we're meeting all the standards and go out for construction bids. So just a brief overview. The 428 plan. This was a new disaster relief plan that we, the Nicholas County Board of Education, opted to pursue. And it gave us $177,513,582. This money was allowed to provide us with flexibility. We went through an extensive amount of work to secure the additional dollars. And because of the additional work that we took on, we were able to increase our funding from approximately $76 million for our losses to over $177 million. So because of the extra work we took, that we did, we were actually able to secure $100 million more than had we gone the traditional route. And that's something I don't think a lot of people realize, but because of that additional $100 million more, we're able to use it to further benefit our school system for generations to come. This 428 plan also says that we accept responsibility for all costs above the fixed estimate. Again, that fixed estimate is this total amount. There had been a lot of discussion concerning the traditional method versus the 428 plan. As we were advised at the beginning from FEMA, had we selected the 428 plan, we would have had to have replaced doorknob for doorknob, camera for camera, window for window. If we went above that, then this board would have had to have absorbed the additional cost. So for Kanawha County, if you talk to any of their board members or you talk to anyone in Kanawha County, you may want to ask them how they're faring on that, because they've not stayed with, my understanding is they've not stayed with their traditional plan. So the cost of moving forward and going outside of the additional numbers of replacement, they're responsible for. So we've hired a construction management team, Skanska, which we have the member Mike Hall with us today, and that team is almost like an insurance policy to ensure that we stay on track and that we do not go over the numbers. Again, this pilot project, we received this reimbursement, the $177 million. It's also been a lot of people don't understand the process. They think that we would just provide $177 million into our bank account. That's not the way it is. We do not collect interest off of this money. Yes?
You might want to add that when we chose them, we got recommendations from other school systems of how effective they were. We didn't just go out there and grab somebody.
Right. We thoroughly researched, and we checked references, actually visited a school system that they had constructed or managed the construction process. And I've been quite pleased with them thus far. They've saved us a lot of money in negotiations with contracts. So again, this is just the language that talks about the procurement, all of the rules, everything that we have to follow, and we have been following them, and we have been audited, and continuously audited, and we have fared very well. So this 428 plan, I also wanted to bring up the people that signed it. The Nicholas County Board of Education, Dr. Gus Penix, the president. Signature of Homeland Security, Emergency Management, Jimmy Jeanette. Signature of the School Building Authority representative, Brian Abraham. And Mary Ann Tierney, she's the regional administrator from FEMA. The reason this is so important is that this Board of Education, along with all of these other members, agreed to a set of plans, a process, a program that we have adopted, and it's identified as our scope of work. So that scope of work is very, very important that we stick to that. So what I'm going to do today is to show you how we're meeting the scope of work that this plan calls for and says that we are to meet. Any questions thus far?
Just one, I'm thinking when you, on the very first slide, when you're talking about differences in amounts between the old, or the traditional way and the 428, in the, my thinking is that in the traditional, we'd have been funded at the current enrollment of students now, whereas at the, in the 428, we were allowed to go back and count where this was at the beginning, the schools were at the beginning of their existence. Is that correct?
Basically.
Yeah.
So I'll further explain that. What we were able to do with the funding formula, it allowed us to go back and look at each of the schools, Richwood High School, Richwood Middle School, Summersville Middle School. We were able to look at the peak enrollment for each of those schools and apply today's codes and standards at that peak of enrollment time. So I'm going to use Richwood High School as an example. I think it was 1975, 1965. They had peak enrollment, and again, I wasn't prepared to give you this information, but it was about 1,100 students. So the school, at that time for 1,100 students, was built to a certain standard. Building a school for 1,100 students today is a whole different standard because they have the different construction standards that have to be met. So with the traditional funding, there was no way to go back and build a school in Richwood, for example, Richwood High School for 1,100 because it was only being, I think, 30% utilized. 30%. That's how low the utilization was. And then go back and build a school at Richwood Middle School for the peak enrollment of 750, 800, something like that. I'm just going from memory. And again, their enrollment was also very low. We had no opportunity, and in Summersville Middle School, the same. We had no opportunity to use the additional funding. So if we would have gone back and said, okay, we want to accept this funding, then the SBA, there's no way they can approve the funding for projects like that because we had such a low student enrollment. Therefore, FEMA then would not be able to support that reimbursement because of not meeting Policy 6200 standards. I know it's a very complex explanation, but that's why we are where we are. When FEMA realized that we were in this dilemma and we had the opportunity to secure the additional funding instead of losing it, because what we would have had to have done is gone with today's current population and asked for funding for that and built the schools to right size the schools for the current population. When FEMA realized that we had the opportunity to secure a lot more funding, they presented us with the pilot project. The pilot project, the 428 plan, we knew that it was going to be a lot of extra work, but I thought that it was worth it because it will support our educational system for generations. And because of this plan, we were able to go back, use all the same criteria to identify the number of students at peak enrollment in the schools. And instead of saying, okay, we have to forego that money because we don't have that much student population in a particular area, the 428 plan says, okay, now you can take that extra money and you can shift it to other schools. And that's what we did. And that's what I don't think a lot of people understand. I know that I've discussed it and I've presented on it many, many times, but it is a very, it's a very lengthy process that can be very confusing. But that's why we are where we are. We were able to, we did the extra work. So instead of just giving up the additional money, we said, we'll do this plan, we will accept this additional money, and we will convert it to the use in our school system.
Dawn, I think it's important to point out too that this is going to give our county basically 7 new schools.
Yes.
7 new schools. And also, by going with the comprehensive high school, you were, was it 30 million or 40 million of that money was career tech
Yes, I think it was 42 million,
to make that the comprehensive high school.
yes.
So, and also, I think the 428 plan, and Heather, I don't know, you can correct me about this, but I think, didn't that come about when Hurricane Sandy hit the northeast up there and the government put that in because of all the destruction? And I don't know if it's still, are they still using the 428?
I think that it's still an available option, and it did, you are correct, it did come in as a result of Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy.
Yes.
I'd like to make one other point. The flood occurred in June of 16, June 23rd. We were 2 years and 3 months to get to this point, just simply where we could get them to approve a plan of some sort. You can see that the date's 9/4/18, and we're not quite 3 years now. And we've had some planning and development time, which this is kind of the normal time. I'd say, I'd ask my architect back there, I'd say, it takes a while to plan, doesn't it? Once you get to the point where you can plan, then it takes a period of time of just planning and working through things and getting ideas and that type of thing. And so while people might think 5 years is a long time, we were 2 years and 3 months getting to this point. And so,
And we followed the process that FEMA established. FEMA advised us to not pay for architectural and planning services or do any of that work prior to the official signing of the 428 and securing the final approval. Because we, you know, we stood a great chance of not being reimbursed. Kanawha County did move forward with theirs, and I have no idea whether they got reimbursed or did not get reimbursed. So at this point, it looks like maybe a not. And I didn't feel like we could jeopardize millions of dollars of the Nicholas County Board's money. So I followed the process exactly as I was told. And FEMA will tell you that. Summersville, Richwood Middle, and Richwood High Schools, of course, they were significantly damaged on June 23rd, 2016. And of course, this just talks about they met the 50% analysis. Let me tell you why that's so important. When we first went to evaluate the schools and the devastation, I cannot even express to you how devastated I felt, and I was new to this program, to this school system. The devastation I saw among the communities and the teachers and the principals. It was horrible. But when I went in and found out the schools have been cleaned at Richwood and at Summersville, and we were told that $1.5 million to get them cleaned was looking good. I was feeling good. I'm like, we're good. We're going to open up schools on time. We're going to be okay. Then we had a kickoff meeting, July 20th, I think it was. And at that kickoff meeting in Charleston, we were told at that time that President Obama had signed a rule in January 2016 that federal monies can no longer be spent in a floodway. Guess what? Richwood High School, Richwood Middle School, both are situated in the floodway. So I went through the task of working with engineers, Corps of Engineers, in evaluating the schools. When we went in, the first look, the evaluation, the numbers were low. It certainly did not meet that 50% threshold. The challenge we have with that is, let's just say it was 17%, and I'm just using that number because I don't recall the number, I'm not prepared to give you that. I have it in my documentation. But whatever that initial number was, with it being in the floodway, all that FEMA had to reimburse us for was 17% of the replacement cost of that school. It would have been up to the Nicholas County Board of Education to provide the percentage beyond that to replace the schools. But because of continued evaluation, looking at the foundations, monitoring it, having some ZMM, continuing to monitor and notice the separation of the buildings and the foundations failing and all of these types of things, and the Corps of Engineers coming in and realizing and doing a reassessment, we were very, very fortunate to have met that 50% threshold, because when we did that, FEMA had to fund us at 100%. 100% And I don't know how much people realize that. But because of the continued evaluation and doing what we were supposed to do and being diligent in our work, we were able to get 100% replacement cost versus a percentage of the replacement cost. And that has been a blessing for the school system.
In the floodway, we could not, according to FEMA's regulation, we could not go back and construct in that floodway.
Not with FEMA money. They were not going to provide us with federal monies. And when I asked about, after the initial meeting, we had a board meeting at Cherry River, I went back and asked FEMA, I said, you know, I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do. The schools are clean. What if I present to the board that we just go ahead and stay in these schools? FEMA said, if you stay in those schools, you don't get FEMA money to do any types of repairs, and you don't get FEMA money for any future floods. And they said, you're in a floodway, it will flood again. You will not ever get in it. So that's why when I came back and presented to the board and presented the information and the documentation from FEMA, that's when this board said, no, we cannot put the children's lives in jeopardy, and we cannot, accept that type of liability.
In 2003, we had a flood that went through, and I'm going to be very brief because I know our time is short. 2003, we had a flood, pretty severe. A friend you will recall when you were at Richwood there. Mr. Rush, you were at Richwood too at that time, probably. But we had a flood to go through, and FEMA immediately came in because at that time it just designated as the flood, what's it called, floodplain, and they came in and paid $1 million. We got the buildings cleaned up, and they did great work there. But between then and 2016, things changed. It was no longer in the floodplain, it was in the floodway, and then we learned then at that point in time, if we build there, it's going to be on us, or if we stay there, it's going to be on us. And any future floods, we get nothing from them. And that was extremely risky, not only for the Board of Education financially, but more importantly, risky for the lives of kids that could potentially be in a floodway. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
And I think that's important for people to understand. That's why I wanted to give the background of where we came from, what happened.
Excuse me, but in 2003, I was principal over here at Summerfield Junior High, and it flooded there also, but not to the extent that it did in Richfield.
Well, I think it's not just with the schools, but I think anybody that was impacted by the flood, and they changed on the flood plains, the floodways, and I think the people that had their homes, impacted by the flood, if they took FEMA money, like to relocate or fix their homes, or what, I mean, if they use the FEMA money and they flood again, I don't think they're allowed to be able to use FEMA funds after that either.
So it's
not just a school here. I mean, it's FEMA money, and I guess they're tired of paying the same money over and over and over. They want people out of the floodway.
And that makes sense.
That's true. If you accept FEMA money and you don't move, then that's it.
It's on you next time.
Mr. Heston, am I correct in what I said about 2003? They came in, FEMA, and cleaned up?
Yes.
I was thinking, and then after that flood, FEMA told us if it ever flooded there again, that would be a green zone, that whole area.
I know it's designated as a floodway. It's designated as a floodway, and Keith Butcher was superintendent when the flood occurred, and he left, I think it was June 17th, did not come back on June 23rd. I was hired like mid-June, but I actually did not take my position here till July 1st. And so I came in and met these wonderful gentlemen, Kevin Hess and Chris Hanshaw, and absolutely could not believe how everyone was working together. You know, Kim Mileto, and again, at the time, it was Eric.
It was pretty chaotic, actually. We couldn't even file a FEMA claim for 3 weeks after the flood.
Yeah,
We were, actually, to be honest, we were in the process of getting the buildings cleaned because we thought they would do the same things they did in 2003.
that's right.
So, yeah,
And that's how they had
We did not
proceeded.
even have a meeting with FEMA until July the 21st.
Right,
first.
yeah, it
Release
was,
the building, and they said, whoa, you don't know what you're doing. And-
Hands down and said, stop everything.
and we was 3 days after the flood, we had a contract with Surfro because we thought it was going to be the same, and if we just left it sit there and mold, then they would be unusable. So we was at a point in time where we got to clean them, you know. So I think it flooded on a Friday, and Monday we had an emergency meeting and had a signed contract with Surfro to start cleaning, and we couldn't even file a FEMA claim for 3 weeks after that.
They were moving, they had stuff under control. You know, I thought, okay, we can do this. They really were moving.
They would pay for that initial claim, don't they?
They did, they reimbursed us, yes.
You know, we were just acting as we did under the previous one, and so we knew time is of the essence when we've got all that heat, all that moisture in closed buildings, so we were on it.
And that's why a lot of people don't realize, well, they did before. Well, the rules changed in January, and that's what happened.
I might remind you of this also. We were told on July the 18th, 21st, in that range, that about the buildings in Richwood being in the floodway, that's when we had to make emergency arrangements to get over to Beaver and open school on the 19th of August. So
Yes, because I had actually allowed a group of students to come in. From my understanding, we were good, the school was clean, they could come in and you know, work and do their jobs. And when I was told, no, it's got to stop, it's, you know, you can't be in there, I begged to let us start kids at that school. I'm like, can I do it? They said no. So we had to take and make everyone leave, and it was an ordeal. It was an ordeal, but
And it was
We tried.
amazing, as time went on, how much the buildings just started to fall apart.
yes, yes, and Dave Ferguson can certainly attest to that. But what was a blessing, you know what? That was a blessing for us that happened, because had that not happened, this county school system would have had to have moved those schools and absorbed the cost, or the majority of the cost.
It wasn't like we just started cleaning up buildings that were falling apart. You got to realize they didn't start falling apart until the water table dropped back down, and
Then they
2 to
started.
3 weeks after they flooded is when everything started settling and they started falling apart.
And that's when it started happening.
I know my granddaughter was a student at Somerville Elementary, and I went there to pick her up one day for an appointment, and one of the teachers told me that the walls were cracking, separating there, and you could see outside from inside. You could look through the crack and see outside where it was separating. It was really dangerous for kids to even be in there at that point.
Well, since it's a floodway, then the proposed walking trail is not going to be possible.
Not in the floodway.
Right?
It's been moved to the floodplain.
It's been moved to the floodplain area and reduced in size.
Where?
The same area is just shrunk in half. We couldn't, I don't think I have it with me today, but we had to shrink it in half because they changed the floodplain line. And so it's, I think, north, I guess. I'm looking at the drawing, in my mind I'm looking at the drawing, but it's been shrunk in half and it's out for approval.
Yeah, because it can't be, the floodway, can't be in the floodway. So, of course, our intent was to utilize the sub-award to develop the two projects, Richwood High School, Richwood Middle School, located on Cherry River Elementary site, maintaining their identity, mascots, classrooms, etc. And of course, Summersville Middle School, comprehensive Nicholas County High School with an integrated career technical education facility will be located to property commonly referred to as the Glade Creek site. Again, this was all part of the 428 plan that was signed off on. The existing Cherry River Elementary School, located off of Riverside Drive, is a one-story building with school facilities covering 7 acres, additional projects 2.74, And then it will accommodate a modified and enlarged facility. Modification of school will serve grades 6 through 12 in addition to the existing elementary school. Richwood Middle School and Richwood High School will maintain their respective areas of operation, administration, and administrative staff in the modified Cherry River Elementary building, thereby facilitating a 21st century learning community. And this, again, came from the community of having a desire to have their heritage with a lodge style with stone, wood, and lumber. And of course, you know, this plan integrated that mediated agreement. That's why you're seeing a lot of the language. The facility will have an outdoor amphitheater, play, and learning areas. The addition to the existing school will also include expanded parking, access to comply with fire code, and current proposed floor plan is 108,950 square feet. And that's what we've stayed with. These are the areas that were specifically mentioned. Of course, the gymnasium, locker rooms, auditorium, the biology, physics labs, core subject areas, advanced placement classrooms, special needs life skills classrooms, resource classrooms, conference areas, art room, band room, administrative areas, restrooms, mechanical support spaces, kitchen, dining, outdoor play area, and outdoor learning area. And what I'm showing you in the PowerPoint is exactly it actually was copied from the 428 document that I provided you. I'm just giving you a brief snapshot through this plan. And of course, we've got the Summersville Middle School Comprehensive High School, and it talks about with the CTE, and of course, everything is built, adopted to codes and regulations, Western Board of Education codes and policies. And again, talks about being above the 100-year floodplain. It'll have a safe schools entrance, shelter in place. Also, with the CTE Center, it'll be constructed at Glade Creek, sites approximately 71 acres with access roads. Proximity of related educational facilities supports the comprehensive high school concept.
Excuse me, Donna.
Yes.
Why does that list the address of Craigsville?
When the plan was completed by FEMA, they just had error.
It was by Craigsville.
Yeah. Yeah, the Glade Creek Complex, of course, is located in Glade Creek. And when we got, we'll go back to where you, right here. When we got the plan, before we signed it, I did a final review. I caught the error, and FEMA didn't see that as an issue. They said, we're here to do a signing. We'll move forward with the signing. It says Craigsville, but everybody knows that the Glade Creek site, where the Glade Creek site's located, so they weren't concerned with it.
Had you ever heard of a floodway and a floodplain?
I had not.
I had not.
Now, I was a principal at Arnoldsburg Elementary School when it flooded, and I had already accepted a job with the State Department of Education. The flood hit, and of course, I stayed and cleaned that school prior and had everything up and running again before I left it. And of course, now they have a new school outside of the flood zone, but I hadn't heard any of that type of stuff. So for Glade Creek, work to be completed is the new school complex, 6 through 12. Final facility will be a multi-story arrangement. Be submitted to West Virginia School Building Authority, Homeland Security, and FEMA for inclusion in this scope of work. So with this scope of work and 800 parking spaces, you can see it's not quite as defined as the Cherry River campus is, but you can clearly see that once we have it defined, then we will present that, and it will be included in the scope of work. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And again, it talks about each school will keep their own identity and have their own areas within the large building complex. The exterior design will be brick, stone, glass, metal panels to create a modern look. Glade Creek campus, work to be completed. We have all the classrooms, which I read for Richwood area. I don't really see any reason. It's core, classroom, special ed, all the standards, conference areas, restrooms, auditorium, so science classrooms, it's wrestling room, training room. So it's all listed here. Career technical.
Mine doesn't list chemistry. Is it on there?
What do you mean?
I see the
For Glen Creek?
biology, physics, general science, and core subjects. I wonder why chemistry's not there.
I think that was the classrooms, they will be set up with the lab amenities needed. I mean, that was my understanding. They're all set up, they can use multiple purposes. They'll have the gas and the water and all those things, so it serves as the same. Now, mind you, this doesn't have, you know, desk for desk and down to that amount of detail. This was an overall meeting policy 6200 guidance. Career Center will serve both Ridgewood High School and Nicholas County High School students. The school system will provide transportation from Ridgewood High School to the new Career Technical Education Center. The verified 14 CTE instructional areas are listed below, which I'll show you. The CTE may expand to 18 programs, and we'll submit change requests if verified 14 are changed to a maximum of 18. You'll see later on in the program, there's one area that I did remove, and that was diesel mechanics, and I have additional program offerings. So this is the listing that we have, and we'll be doing all of these except for the diesel. And as you'll see, the final statement is that upon completion of the new facility, the applicant will provide an amended, if applicable, list of programs to scope of work, because with career technical education, demands change, student interests change, and the economy changes as far as demand. So it's very difficult to project all of the different programs you're going to host 5 years out. There's some that are standard that you're always going to need, but there's others maybe not so much. So that's why that's listed, that is that there may be a change, and of course it'll be presented.
Did Mrs. Chenoweth, when she presented to the board, did she say there was 16 that you all were looking at right now?
Yes, 16 is the national model, and we did some grouping, and we grouped some programs together that are typically pulled apart because we're doing a modification of it, because so many of our courses are shared. And so we have an actual 13 programmatic areas and an entrepreneurship hub. So we will have, you know, multiple programs. The list I have right now, feel very comfortable with moving forward. But yeah.
Donna, what falls under therapeutic? You have therapeutic service.
Oh, I would have to pull it all.
That's your medical? Or?
Yes, that's all your medical. Yeah, that's all your medical. So what I'm going to do at this point, Chris Hanshaw has been very involved in this process, and he is my numbers guy when it comes to WEVUS. And so I would like for him to present on each of the schools, and I will stay here to help answer questions if you have any.
Okay, so one of our greatest concerns and our board's greatest concern from the beginning is future affordability. So future affordability, we have to figure out how many spaces do we need everywhere, right? So a teacher concern we ran into was teachers really didn't want to travel much. So we have taken lots of feedback from our community, from our employees. So for Richwood Middle School, the current enrollment right now, I just pulled these yesterday. So this is the actual numbers from WEVUS as of yesterday. It's 217 students. Whenever you see these projected numbers, the only thing they take into account for is I took current classes and moved them forward. They don't account for students leaving or students coming. These are the current enrollment, just the class sizes rolled in forward. So in Richwood Middle School, the projected enrollment when we open that school is about 190. So, and if you got questions, just,
There are fluctuations from 2017 through 2021.
sure.
So how can you predict whether it's, sometimes it increases, sometimes it decreases?
Sure, so I'll tell you how I did that. So I took a trend over the last 4 years, and because your Richwood Middle School is comprised of Cherry River, 100% of Cherry River students, and then a percentage of Gully River students and a percentage of Panther Creek students. And I took an average because what I could do was take my 5th grade numbers, and the next year I could see the enrollment at Richwood Middle School in the 6th grade. I take 100% of my Cherry River numbers because usually all those go to Richwood Middle School. And then I have a class size the next year, and I know that that number, the rest of that number, when you subtract the Cherry River, you know the rest of that number came from Panther Creek and Gully River together, right? So then I was able to take the total class sizes of both places and see what percentage of those students went to Richwood Middle School. So I took that time average and I predicted by that way. So I took the total class sizes from Gully River and Panther Creek, added those together, and I took 40% of those kids and moved them to Richwood Middle School because that was the average that went, was 40%. So that way, that did take an account for bigger and smaller class sizes because the same percentage generally went to that school. So 40% of a 20-kid class is less than 40% of a 40-kid class. So that took an account for fluctuations.
Is that based on projected enrollment or current enrollment?
That was based on current enrollment. So that was based on live real numbers that I had in 2020. I did these projections in 2020. So far, I can show you the numbers. I've got them all the way out, and I've passed them out to the board before, but
You've nailed it.
I've got one.
yeah, they've been pretty daggone close. But that's how I got it. So if Richwood grows and people move there, that number's going to grow. If people move out, that number's going to shrink. So that's only the hard facts that we have today that I base these projections on.
Are Gully River and Panther increasing?
No, they're not.
And the issue is, I mean, we have to base it on some type of projection, and nobody knows, and the most reliable one is to look at past trends and what's happened there, and so you've done that and calculated that 40% is what is moving into that school, so
Right.
it's the most reliable thing we have to depend on.
That's the most reliable thing we have, and that's just because we don't want to, we kind of got in a little bit of trouble with Gully River. When we built that school, we opened it up at like 100%. I mean, it was
Make the
full.
disclaimer, I was not the superintendent then.
So anyhow, we did projections to make sure, to do the best of our ability to be as responsible as we can to ensure that we don't build a school that's too small for either place for what we have.
So the Gully River you just spoke of, has the enrollment declined since your
Yeah,
projection?
they're now down to, I think, 85%.
And they've been open, what, 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years maybe?
Yeah, no, 2013, I think, is when that school was built.
A couple years before me.
Yeah.
They've dropped.
So they've dropped. Yeah, I think we opened up, honestly, I think it was close to like 103% capacity. And we're down to like 85.
Well, when we had people working on the pipeline here, our population inflated.
Honestly, it didn't inflate, it stabilized. Instead of us just losing people, it kind of stayed pretty close because for several years we was losing 100 kids, 80 kids, 90 kids, and then for those couple of years of the pipelines, we've only lost like 40 kids or 50 kids. So the only thing it did was slow that, and then, last year, then they left and it kind of fell off again. But I think, from talking to county assessor and anything, I think we might be close to stabilizing that. We shouldn't see those huge 100 kids drops anymore. You can't predict anything, but that's just the estimates. But so the whole point was just try we got our future projections to make sure that we're not shortchanging anybody in any way. But so if we look at our future projections and we know we're dropping, if we build a school to today's size, knowing we're dropping, we feel like we've right-sized our school. That's what we feel like. We have the right size. We don't have too many classrooms. And if we build it to today's size, we're not having to hire a ton more teachers. We're filling the classrooms we have, and there's not teachers traveling around. So that was, when they're designed, the classrooms are actually pretty equal with the classrooms they have today at both locations.
Does policy 6200 not dictate that it has to be built to 10% beyond?
15%.
15%.
Yeah, 15% beyond projected capacity, which
Right. Okay.
by the time we do our projections, we're going to be there.
Who determines the projections? Is it
Mr. Hall could maybe
Just-
answer that.
just us or?
Well, we know that WVU made projections on our last CEFP, and they're not the people to go to. I'm sorry, WVU.
Well, one of the things that, there was, just to stay with, because I mean, honestly, you could get into and debate this thing for a year.
Yeah,
We're staying with what was agreed upon with this original 428 plan. We're going to be meeting the square footage size for the schools. And everybody agreed to that, and that's how to move forward. Because literally, you could debate it, projections are projections. You know, we believe we're accurate, and when all of these were signed, everyone else believed it was accurate.
so at this point in time, we've been able to provide the same classrooms, pretty much the same classrooms that they have today, and fit all that within the agreed to, the agreement that was with. So, we'll just go on. And so we thought, well, how can we want to make sure, that this is workable. So we solicited principals, and you can see Mr. Collins had emailed us back and said, hey, this is what I need. This is what I need for a school. This is everything. This is what I need to operate a school. So, you know, we felt like, hey, if we agree, the principals come in and say, yes, this is what we need, then that's important, you know. So we went through it, and the principals say, yes, this is what I'm operating my school on today. This is what I need today, and we know we're dropping, we should be good. So,
Chris, have you run that by the faculty? I know as a faculty member, I would have had a wish list a mile long. I understand that, but
we got all the faculty's wish list when we moved into the pods.
And Dave Ferguson has met with them a few
Yeah,
times.
yeah, countless.
And
He's met with them.
they had the school so enlarged,
And so-
it was,
Well, not even that, but that's how we come to, because if you want to follow SBA guidelines, then they should be traveling. They should not, you know, they should be traveling, they all shouldn't have their own classroom. So we did take into account for what they wanted. The only people that I'm aware of that's going to be traveling in the new school is special ed, and that's just because regulations and the new, what they're supposed to be doing is pushing in and being in the regular classroom with their students. So they're the only people that, and they have work areas, like a workroom, but they don't have their own classroom. Now, where we have to,
yeah, we do have.
we have resource room, we have a resource room, we have
Skills.
the skills, the apartment. So self-contained, yes. But the majority of those students that have IEPs are push-in. So they're the only teachers that I know of that don't have their own space.
can we legally offer bonuses to teachers to travel from one school to another, maybe from one period a day in the event that there's a shortage?
We can riff them and have them as itinerant teachers. It wouldn't be a bonus, it would be itinerant. that they
And
would go.
I think theoretically pay the mileage,
Yeah.
but we can't give school employees bonuses.
Yeah, we riff the position and then we say, you go to this school or that school.
Also, wasn't all this information you provided to the professional scheduler that we hired?
Yeah, and we took an account to make sure, you know, we took them in account too. They come back and said, you need this many core classrooms, you need this many. And so
We did.
and I feel like we got a good plan because we accomplished Teachers aren't moving, we gave them what they wanted. We have input from principals and said, this is what I need to run a school. And then we have a professional scheduler that was third party, had nothing to do with any of us, hadn't seen the school, anything. And they said, this is how many classrooms you need to operate. And then we're trying to fit it all into our current staff, so that it is not costing us more money in the future.
How did that agree
You-
with the professional scheduling?
How did what?
How did they agree? How did this compare?
We
What the
actually,
principal wanted, what the faculty wanted, what the.
it actually lined up because the principal said, they both said, you need this many math teachers for this grade and this amount of kids. And that's exactly what Mr. Collins said. He said, hey, I need 3 rooms for 6th grade, I need 3 rooms for 7th grade, I need 3 rooms for 8th grade. It actually agreed good. So they have a very effective schedule in place. They're doing a great job.
Good.
The other thing that I would mention that we can't forget is, if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of this last school year, the original enrollment for Richwood Middle School was, at that time, 248 students. There's a number that I seem to remember seeing at the beginning of this year. Then when we actually got the school opened, their enrollment was more like 218 kids.
Yeah.
So they were overstaffed. We had staff to school for 248. Is that correct, Superintendent?
Well, so what happens?
Well, hang on. 248, we're already down to 218, 217 to your sheet there, and then anticipation of 190 kids. We're eventually going to have to reduce staff to catch up with what we didn't reduce last year, and then reduce further down to 190 kids. So you're going to have fewer teachers in that building, the same as you would have at Summersville Middle School, or Richwood High School, or Nicholas County High, or any other school in the county.
The only projected growth, and that's just because I can show you class sizes, is Nicholas County High School. Nicholas County High School right now today is sitting at 702 students, and I believe when that school opens, we'll be at 780, in the 780s. And that's because the class sizes today for your like freshman class, and I'll have to look at it, they're like 160. Well, when you go down to your middle school classes and you promote those forward, those are closer to 200. So without anybody coming in or anything, just promoting those forward, you're going to be at, I've got them projected at 792 by just moving classes forward.
So we're going to have to add teachers there.
So we'll probably have to add teachers there.
So one of the things, we'll talk about, there's some positions that definitely should not be filled. A current position at Richwood High School, a current position at Richwood Middle School, possibly 2. I cannot justify it with the number of students that we have. I also have some other areas that should not be filled. But what I'm doing and what I have to meet with, and I'm working with Sarah Lee, because she did a mock schedule for me on one, and looking at our numbers. Because we have this additional COVID money and trying to keep class sizes smaller, I am moving forward to go ahead and post those positions. I want to post them for, a year, and make sure the principals understand this is where we are with our numbers. You can only get so far over on your staff. And our numbers, you can't support some of the areas. But we can right now because of the COVID money. So those are some conversations that I'm having. I had conversations with 2 principals yesterday about it, well actually 3, about this is technically what we should do because we're not splitting grades. That's something else we took a hard look at, and this board does not want split grades. So we're trying our best not to split grades. We've tried to be creative with some flex teaching positions and things like that. But we have to take some hard looks at these numbers. And I think moving forward, because some of our kids are so deficient with COVID and not being in class, they're so behind, they need those extra supports. And I'm 100% supportive in giving those teachers and that additional staff right now. But I need to make sure that these schools understand that we have to manage our student-teacher ratio and balancing the budget after the COVID money's gone. So those are just some discussions. So with some of these, the science position should be cut at Richwood High School right now. But I have numbers in there, but for the following year, and like I said, the principal knows that. Richwood Middle School, I have not had the conversation about the different positions there. But again, we have to take a good solid look at it, because it's my job to make sure that that we're doing what we're supposed to do fiscally.
I think the board, I personally, and I feel like the board probably would agree with me, that we value the fact that we do have these dollars that we can put these additional people in. As you just said a moment ago, the reality of it is in 3 years, that goes away, and we're going to lose some people at that particular time because we can't afford to run those on just regular state funding or local funding. So, yeah, but I do value them now, and I appreciate it, but we're kind of overstaffed as a result of that, and that can't go on. So.
Yeah, and I don't want people just to be shocked at the end and say, well, wait a minute, I've lost these many. So I want to make sure that we have a plan in place with each principal so that they're well aware, they can look at the numbers, they understand. I'll have Sarah Lee heavily involved in that process to say, okay, we're going to do this and we need the supports right now, but we have to make sure that we manage this over the next couple of years.
And one of the hardest things as a principal, when you lose students and you try to make a schedule out where they can have electives, it's a lot easier when you have a lot of students and you have more flexibility. That you can, maybe this teacher has a minor in this and you get a class in there. It's really hard when you start losing numbers and you just feel disgusted that they don't get all the electives that maybe other students in their grade can have.
What did you say the population of Douglas County High School is now?
702.
700.
What was it last year, or this past year?
It was 668.
668.
I think that's what it was.
I
About
think,
35
yeah,
students.
about 35 students, and that's exactly, if you look at when I did this, you can see that last year, this was 2 years ago, so their class of 152 moved out, and a class of 180 moved in, so.
So you basically are just projecting.
All we're doing is taking
Just
students,
moving
them.
just taking
Moving them
students
up.
that's in this grade and moving
Moving
them
them
1 year
forward.
ahead.
Matriculating them through.
Yeah, just, that's the cold hard facts that we have. I'm not guessing at anything. The only thing I'm guessing at is the Richwood Middle School population, but that's based on data that we have in history and going forward. That's the best we can do. There's no other way to.
And the high school numbers are pretty solid.
Yeah, the high school numbers are the same because you can matriculate. Because remember, I just went 4 years. That's all I went. So, senior to 7th grade's more than that.
Can you look at like what's coming in, like kindergarten?
No, see, that's another thing that I can't do, and you'll see numbers in just a minute for Cherry River, and I'll explain that. I can't predict pre-K, and I can't predict kindergarten, and after that, I can't predict the next year. So, to be fair with those facility numbers, I've left them at all the projections that they have for that facility was left at 190, which they're already well below. But that's where we left them to ensure that we had enough space.
No, wait, you said Cherry River, you left it 190?
Yeah, because we had no way to predict.
Are they, how far below are they now?
We'll get there.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Sorry, that's okay.
Cherry River was 226 in 2021,
No.
No,
according to
Richmond Middle.
Zoom West Virginia K12.westvirginia.us.
No, in
No.
2021, they was like right at 190. Cherry River was.
Wonder why there's such a difference.
Mine are Weavis numbers.
Yours are actual.
Mine's straight from
Bodies in the
Weavis, the
school.
people enrolled. And that's even more than bodies in the school because that number includes birth to 3 and all those services. So that number is actually more than what is bodies in the school.
I'm sorry, that was 2020. I'm 20.
Oh, okay, yeah, 2020, yes, you are correct. Yes, they did. They took a pretty big drop. They had a pretty big end this year. Last year's kindergarten class was massive. It was like 36 kids. But other than that, the classes are shrinking.
And the reason it was massive is because the age limit changed and because
Yeah,
the
they
date changed, it allowed more kids to come in, and that's why there's such a growth number.
I think
for
your
them.
age used to be like September, and then they moved it back to
Yeah.
July 1st.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
accounts
so-
for that increase.
So that just made it, and they're huge at every school. that year. Our agreement, I'm sure you don't want me to read all these to you. I'll throw a few of them out there, but the
That-
agreement,
That wasn't, that's where Mr. Collins said that.
oh, okay.
That was
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry.
Collins explaining how.
So these are the requirements Mr. Collins said he needed in his school. He needed band, choir, ensemble classes to meet. He needed general music classes. He said they'll meet during core teacher planning periods. Remember, we don't want empty classrooms, but health, PE, wellness spaces, they're going to share those with Richwood High School in their, because they're using it's like an old cafeteria, multipurpose room at the moment. And areas, and then he gave us a map and said they could be interchanged as needed. And of course, they said it was not a problem to share they don't have a real high self-contained population, so they could share space with Richwood High School.
All this is based on
All this is based
current
on
enrollment and projected enrollment.
all this is based on Mr. Collins, what he says today. This is what I need today. So this is not even based on future people losing stuff. This is what I need today. And so we gave them the same classrooms as what they need today, even though we know, because there's no way something drastic will have to happen to change all those kids moving forward. So we know, we have proof in our mind that they're losing population, but we designed on today's numbers. So this was the map.
I want to make sure that was clear, because I'm going to get called on that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to get a call, but the new facility is designed on today's numbers. And so that will help you out, because it's designed on today's numbers, knowing there's going to be a decrease. We still gave them the same classroom they needed today. So if it was built, they could move in every student they have today.
Mr. Moose, one thing that I think that will help is in the 428 plan that everyone has signed off on, Brian Abraham and everyone signed, the square footage is designated for that campus.
Right.
And we're not deviating from that. We're meeting the square footage, and that was already previously
So
approved.
109,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Yep.
Okay.
So that, I think that helps. Now, if we were going in to ask for a change in the scope of work and reduce that square footage down to, a bunch, then, yeah, I think that would cause concern, but we're not asking to change that.
Then you'd have to go back to the SBA. And
Yeah, I have to go back to.
Yeah, so we're not asking to change any of that.
This is all the original
This is
agreement.
the original agreement.
So if you can see, even at Richwood High School, he's accommodated all of his needs. He has 3 6th grade classes, 3 7th grade, 3 8th grade, and they have a split social studies. They're sharing a multi-purpose room. This is a pod outside, and they're sharing a special ed room, the self-contained room. So he even has everything that he asked for today in Richwood High School. This is what he asked for, and this is what he got. This was his plan. He says, I can have a school with this. That's what he's got.
Because I was concerned that we didn't have enough space, and that's why I originally came in and wanted to keep 6th grade back at their home elementary schools because of my concern.
Because they was already
That's when
cramped up.
he moved
They was
forward.
already cramped up once when we
And
put
I didn't
the
wanna
whole thing
cramp them.
in Cherry River. They was kind of cramped, and so our first thought was, we don't want them to go through that again.
And that's when he
And that
presented
was-
his plan. and
That
said-
was the thought process of moving just leaving the 6th grades there,
Amen.
and so because we thought we don't want that to happen again. But
Right.
then
And he presented this and said, we can make it work, they won't be overcrowded.
this is 100% what the faculty wanted.
Chris, you said Richwood High School, the plan here is.
This is I know, but this is currently. This is at the
Talking about
current
Richwood
Richwood High
High
School
School.
location. This is at Beaver. This is at Beaver. So yes, this is Richwood Middle School, but this is how they're being housed in their layout for Beaver, the Beaver facility.
So that's not
This is
talking
not,
about the new.
this is not the
No,
new
no,
building.
no, no.
This is just their current and how many, it's kind of a visual representation of how many classrooms they needed. Is all that is. So now we're kind of comparing, we just put a side-by-side comparison of what they currently use and the new facility. So currently, they have 10 classrooms that are not shared. Those are 10 teaching classrooms. As far as I know, they're not shared. The new plan has exact same thing. So like I said, we can house today's numbers in there. Of course, it's the exact same. They're sharing the band room with the high school, which they're part of the high school band, most of them. So that's great anyhow. Then general music classes. We do have to try to, use our facility all the time, not have empty stuff, so they are going to meet in those planning periods, to which both locations will be the same thing, really.
Chris, in the new school, they're going to have an auditorium.
And a band room.
Yeah, so they will be standalone, they'll even have more space. I mean, when you look at this, they have the same amount of classrooms, but they're adding on a band, they have a band room in the pods now, but they'll have an auditorium to use as well. And then they'll have an art room in the new school, which they currently don't have right now. So that's even more stuff. And Health, PE, Wellness will share spaces with Richwood High School. So they'll have a gymnasium, which they just have a multi-purpose room right now. So that's your side-by-side. Yes, they have more academic spaces than they currently have right now. And we're doing that even knowing their population is going to decline. They're getting more, and we know they're going to have less. So, Richwood High School. So they dropped a good little bit. They're going to drop a good little bit because if you look at their current class sizes, they're in the like 80s and 70s. And if you look at Richwood Middle School class sizes, they're already in the 60s. So you can see that decline of students that will be moving forward. So I have them projected at 286. And that's, like I said, that's saying that nobody moves away and nobody comes in. That's just taking the current kids that we have and moving them forward. So like I said, I don't know how to factually without.
And those are pretty solid numbers. I mean, those are like Richwood Middle School students typically go to Richwood High School.
Yeah.
So we're moving Richwood Middle School students onto Richwood High School.
And like even in next year, they're going to kind of stay at where we're at today. But the year after that, I can show you class sizes. They're going to lose 50 kids in 2 years. Just like sheer class size. Like I said, I wanted to, this is the most objective way, without inserting opinion or guesstimates I could find, to accurately project our future enrollment. So this is the current pod configuration, how they're laid out. This is the Richwood Middle School pod that they're sharing, their self-contained room. I think it's right here.
It's D.
Yes, yeah, it's D2, yeah. And so, of course, their office area is over here, and if you're up there, then the main building is right here. So,
In these two areas here, this is counseling offices.
right.
The rest of those are the classrooms.
The rest of those are the classrooms. So we counted classrooms. So the current plan that they have right now, they have 16 dedicated classrooms. Well, we know next year they're going to have to lose a science teacher, and so that, I mean, even they're going to lose way more population than what they'll have next year. But the new plan has 15 classrooms. They have 2 special education rooms, and they'll be shared on that campus again as well. They'll have an art room on the new campus, and so what they're really gaining is a large cafeteria learning space and an auditorium. And so like again, you see that they can educate the students of today in the future facility, knowing that they're going to lose 70, 80 kids.
And I made an error on that. 15 classrooms would be for the following year.
Yeah.
School year, it should have been the following year.
Yeah. Cherry River. So now from Weavis, I got 158 students yesterday for Cherry River. Now that is a little bit low. I'm going to guess that we're going to go up 10 to 15 kids, probably max, because your pre-K and your kindergarten kids, usually all of them don't pre-register early enough. And usually you pick up 10 or 15 kids after school starts. So I would add 10, I think a more accurate number is 10 or 15 kids above that, which you're still at, 175. I believe you'll be around 175 this school year. And remember, in my projections for that facility, we left those at 190.
So you didn't project
Oh,
the new school on this one.
No.
So I can't, I mean, like, I can do this year, but for elementary, I don't want to throw a number out there knowing that it probably has no earthly way of being closed. Because I don't know how many kindergarten kids we're going to have next year. I don't know how many pre-K kids we're going to have next year. So I don't feel comfortable, or I don't have a method that I feel comfortable with of accurately projecting these. I don't want to just throw a number out there. So that's why I only did this year, last year, this year.
So we went from the enrollment, when I was first hired, they had 218 students at Cherry River.
Yeah.
And yesterday's Weebus was 158, knowing that there'll probably be 10 to 15 more added.
Only 8 difference then between them and 2020.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's stabilizing it.
Well, remember you had that big influx of kindergarten kids. So you probably had 15 or probably at least 15 more, because your average class size at Cherry River is 27 kids. So,
Yeah, it's not stabilized.
so,
Continue to-
so most of it, I think, we just looked at them yesterday. Like you're mostly, kindergarten's going to be like 20 kids this year, but your higher end's 27. So you had an extra 10 kids last year that you probably wouldn't have had without the age change.
Did you project it at 190?
So, but yeah, there's not that much
So
change.
you're Anyway.
And probably the following year, you're going to have a considerable drop in kindergarten.
Yeah, and we did over-project. I mean,
Maybe.
we over-projected at 190.
I don't know, maybe we can hope for the loneliness of COVID to help us out. I don't know.
So last year, on this kindergarten thing, last year, there was a change in the date that the kids could enroll for kindergarten from, what, September?
I think it was September to July 1st.
They moved it back 2 months, and as a result of that, we gained 10 more kids last year or so.
Yeah,
And then it's going to even out this year to back to what it probably used to be.
back
and
to
then
it was.
perhaps decline.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think you're going to end up with about 20 kids there in kindergarten this year. To which, typically we've had needed two classes in Cherry River for a long time, and now we really only have, I think, a couple grades that need to, and they're on their way out. So
You use the same 3 criteria to estimate the classrooms and all that you did with the high school, or middle school, Gene Collins.
all of these, we asked these suggestions on what they need to run a school with came from the principals. We didn't just make these up. We called them and said, hey, tell us what you need. And so they told us what they needed to run a school today. And so that's what we've designed the school of 3 years from now, when we know that we're losing population to house the kids today. So to ensure that we don't go in there with not enough room. And we've used the criteria for both sides.
And I'll make sure that I add, with the way the school's designed, it's designed with maximum flexibility. So if there's growth in the elementary level, the classrooms can actually shift, they can shift. And you can move students from the middle school to the high school section. The high school section shifts to a new section, or the elementary school shifts up to where the high school used to be occupied, where there's going to be doors on the classrooms, and the way it's going to be laid out, or the way it's laid out, you'll be able to see that it can flex. So there will be plenty. I mean, I feel like we're building to today's numbers for the high school and middle school, and realistically, we're not even counting for the 40% that currently attend the Career Center going over. We're not accounting for the projected 60% that we think will go over for half day, which means that I believe that there will be probably a lot of open space up in the high school area, which means that with students being able to move this elementary, there's lots of possibility for flexings of classes.
So it's not based on that, it's based on current and projected enrollment.
Yep. So what they can do right now, the design school that we have can educate the students of today.
Okay, just a question, Madam Superintendent. Chris, maybe you ought to clarify for me. You said a moment ago that the enrollments, when we opened the school, was like 286. Is that correct?
For Richmond High School, yes.
Okay, that's if kids were there all day long. There'd be 286 kids there, our
Yeah,
projections.
so that's
Hang
kind
on,
of,
hang on, time. Okay, 286 students you project will be there in that building at that time. But we know that some of those kids are going to be out of the building because of they're going to have to be attending the career programs at the comprehensive high school. And does that, did I hear you say it looks like it might be 30, 60%?
40% at least is what we have now. We project 60, but one of the things that I'm hoping we can incorporate also are work-based learning experiences for the kids to go out into the Ridgewood area, which is even going to reduce the number of students who will be there for a full day.
Okay, and I think I heard for next year, this is in a previous board meeting, I think Mr. Career Center, Mr. Bayless, said that he had 128 students current enrollment listed that are going from Ridgewood High School that are going to the Career Center. And that sounds to me like it's about 40% of his current population. So you're going to have as the 40% out of the school on a regular daily basis. So you're not going to have 286 kids in Ridgewood High School. You're going to have more like 220 or something like that.
At most,
At
because
most.
we've not even
Gotcha.
implemented the new programs with students going out into the schools. So with this, it can be, the schools are going to have even much more space than they need, even by building it by today's standards.
I think
with Maple
that's,
Flats.
this is valuable for the community, everyone to understand that the program that we have adopted in this county under agreement with SBA, the school board, state school board, everybody, the philosophy is that we have a comprehensive high school to prepare children for careers. And so from both high schools, we go into that school during the day, and they still will be Ridgewood High School students, all 286 of them.
Yes.
But 60 or so of them in the morning and 60 or so in the afternoon are going to be over at the career at the complex at Nicholas County High School. And they may even take academic classes while they're over there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
And
okay,
yes.
hang on. So it's important that we understand this as we move forward. We're not taking Ridgewood students away from Ridgewood. They are still Ridgewood High School students. But they're going to spend, if they come over, they're going to spend a half a day over there because transportation, well, more importantly, because we are wanting to see that their educational time is fulfilled to the best we possibly can. So half a day over there, half a day back over there. I think it's very important to understand that the concept and get the idea that our projected enrollment when we open is 286 kids. But we're not going to have 286 kids in Ridgewood High School at any given time during the day because we're going to be over here part of it.
but even if they was, we can do it.
We can still accommodate.
You know, that's the thing is, even if they was, we have the same amount of classrooms in the new school as they have studying there today, and we can do it.
So if we know they're going to be over there, so that does free up additional classrooms if we have to move.
Right.
And-
Right, ZMM has done a fantastic job of making what we've called flex classrooms and place them strategically so that we can still keep all the students segregated, but if the middle school needs a classroom and there's space left over from the elementary school, we can accommodate that. If the high school needs a classroom and there's space left over, we can accommodate that. So it's a very, very flexible building that I think will meet their needs.
And let me stress to you what I said in my opening statements. We have more teachers in place at some schools than what we normally would have, and that's because of COVID funding. When COVID funding goes away, we're going to have to stick more to our formula for student-teacher ratio. And I know my teachers here in the room, you understand that. So with what we have here is more of a luxury than what it would be in normal times. It just is. And when we've got extra money, I don't see fit to come in and ask this board to cut positions. I would rather spend the extra money to give these kids services. So just keep that in mind.
One other point that it's not about numbers, but you said the auditoriums would be shared. Well, in new schools, as time passes, the auditorium chairs we need to order top of the line because they'll be the first to go in a new school.
I think Dave can speak to that, but usually they order, if we're gonna use them as classrooms and stuff too, they order different chairs for your front couple rows than your seating in the back that would provide desktops and more durable, and so that is being accounted for, I do believe.
For both schools. Both schools will have shared auditorium.
So, we're just a quick comparison. 9 classrooms in the current plan, in their current location, 2 special ed rooms, gymnasium, cafeteria. So the new one, they're going to have pretty much their own cafeteria because it's divided, and we put it there. But
And it's possible that with us having the school vacated, if there's additional rooms that they want to spread out in
yeah,
this year, they can spread out as long as it doesn't interfere with the construction. So we say 9 is what they need, but could they spread out? They may spread out and use more rooms, which is not a problem.
and their gymnasium will be their current cafeteria that's going to be renovated, and that'll be a dedicated gymnasium area. They'll probably keep the stage so they can have their little performances and stuff in there as well.
Separate from the cafeteria.
Yeah, the cafeteria will
And
be.
the gym, and the
Yes.
auditorium.
Yes, totally separate.
They
So their
have
current
their own.
cafeteria, gymnasium, that'll be dedicated, keep their stage, and then they'll have that. But in the front of the school, they'll have, there's a segregated cafeteria that's split so that the high school, middle school shares this side, or vice versa. Maybe the middle school eats first, but I don't know that schedule out. That's not-
So in the new gymnasium there, will we use wood on the floor like the normal gymnasium?
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know that.
So then all 3 of the schools will be separate.
They'll be
They're
segregated.
not going to be intermingling
Right,
with,
right. They'll be segregated.
We had it designed and still can be, that your elementary will travel through this area, your high school will come through this area, and the middle school will come in through this area. But after meeting with principals and meeting with teachers, they suggested that the middle and the high school both come through
They're getting off
this
the-
area together.
they're getting off the
So
same
all
bus
buses
anyhow.
together.
yeah, I can see the middle and the high school,
Yeah.
but the elementary.
And the elementary's over here.
They-
But it, you know what, if administration says, you know what, we want to keep it middle coming in this way, that's up to them and the community. Or if they want to run them together for the middle and high, that's up to them and the community. But you can see, this is
That's kind of the
middle,
segregation.
this is high, and this is elementary. And with the flex, if the elementary needs more space, then, and these 2 are not in, but they'll be drawn in when we get the final plan. Whoops. So if we need to flex, this high school will start, or this elementary will start pushing up into these classrooms, which is separate.
And that's your front cafeteria.
And that's your front
So
cafeteria. Yeah.
here's their gymnasium they'll keep. This is the current cafeteria, and that's the segregated.
The elementary has a hallway to go to the auditorium or campus.
Yes, they can get to
Without going out around.
Oh, well, the
Right.
auditorium's over here.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
it. So they
Of
can
course,
come through
They have
here.
a hallway they can go through.
Yeah, they can come around through here.
Yeah, they can come through here
Right.
and
Yeah, I couldn't tell quite what that.
We'll let ZMM go through more of the layout than we are. We're just explaining how we got to where we are. You know, just a little bit of background. But, so we'll try to cruise through these pretty quick. The current enrollment is 566 at Summersville Middle School. If you remember a couple of years ago, they was up at 600. So you can see those big classes moving through, and they're just now headed to Nicholas County High School. So the projected enrollment for them is 544. And we're kind of shrinking them a little bit because they're gaining like a large group instruction area. So, 28 classrooms to 25. They currently have 4 special ed rooms, which we're working to do more push in. So we'll drop them down to 2 because they should be pushed in. That's the recommendations. So, of course, they currently have a band room, choir room, art, and shared gym. And on their plan, they'll get a band room, choir room, a gymnasium, and a large group instruction area, and also the cafeteria, the same as everybody else.
So you're reducing over here, you're reducing 5 classrooms altogether, 3 regular classrooms and 2 special ed at that school.
Mhm.
The population was going from 566 to 544.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of this is stuff they have in the pods right now they're operating on, because they're currently operating with this, but those should be push-in. And so they're kind of like they don't have that large group instruction area right now, so that's kind of just a trade out. And
And they did have one prior to the flood. So
yeah,
we're not overbuilding, but we believe it's right
I
sizing.
think you are, you're right, Simon. I think.
yeah, it's
So, but they will be able to use the cafeteria as a learning space.
right. Yeah. Mhm.
They'll also have access to the auditorium, won't they?
Yes, shared.
They will.
It's shared the same as, yeah.
I didn't even list the
I did-
auditorium on it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I guess they could now too, I don't know, but,
Probably, yeah.
Nicholas County High School has 702 students as of yesterday, and 24-25 is 792. So those big classes are moving forward, so that's what we're going to open with is, 90 students more than what they have today.
I'm counting about 1,340 kids on that campus in those 2 schools. That's not including the Career Center,
Right.
and not including the kids that would be coming over from Richmond during the day. But that would put it over 1,400 kids on that campus during the day.
Yep.
Maybe a little better.
Yeah.
Mr. Architect, I hope you've got that building to fit 1,400 kids. Oh, I'm getting a thumbs up back
You
there.
get a thumbs up today.
And that's what we are accounting for a few more of those because, we think a few more of those kids are going to come over and take some regular ed classes just so they can get in their CTE stuff. So they're going from 37 classrooms to 39. They're going from 2 special ed rooms to one static apartment, like self-contained thing. And the rest of it will be push-in, like we're encouraging everybody else to do. Of course, they'll have a band room, art room, gymnasium. They do have band, art, gymnasium. They have an auxiliary gym and auditorium, and all that's the same. They'll have a large group instructional area and entrepreneurship hub. Do you want to go over the?
Well,
thing there?
I have a question about if there's one program that is monitored by the federal government more than anything, it's special ed. Are you sure?
We have
Vivian has been
included-
involved
yeah.
and Christy has been involved. They are
She just
confident.
stepped out.
in
We have
everything
had
we're doing.
special ed in here every step of the way, and they're confident.
Yep.
Each school, we couldn't list every small space here, but there's small hubs and little meeting areas that we've designed that just maybe 10 kids can fit in. You got the library. So there's small places in both schools that they could do pull out if they needed to in privacy.
There's
So
going to be multiple
just-
instructional areas
Yeah,
that are not classrooms.
right. So
But yeah, special
Just
ed
because
has
they're,
been
and that's what we
integral.
didn't want to do is build dedicated classrooms that are set static, that this is where you go. We have to encourage push in and then have spaces for them to go when they need to pull out, but not build sole classrooms for that. Well, they're flexible areas.
And
Is your increase in population based on the students attending the
Emerson Middle School.
vocational?
Nope.
no,
Those projections have absolutely nothing to do with vocation. That is students that are enrolled in Somersville Middle School coming to Nicholas County High School.
and the
So there will be an increase in students in the building.
even more than we have.
Due to the Career Center being a comprehensive high school. But the projections do none of that.
So the Richwood Middle, Richwood High School, and Summersville Middle, Nicholas County High School, those were both projected in the exact same manner with moving the classes forward.
Apples to apples.
Exact same manner.
Just one other thing, I think you touched on it, Madam Superintendent, or maybe Tracy did the last meeting. So in regard to the career program, we're growing that even further. When we talk about kids coming over, we have those that are coming for the certifications and the programs that they're going to be certified in, or whatever. There's another term there, I forgot temporarily. But you're also bringing 9th graders over from both the high schools, and you're also starting the program for 8th graders. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're going to see more kids in that area and coming out of the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, from the Richwood schools over here for part of the day, for part of the year.
The goal is to expand students' knowledge of career opportunities.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm getting ready to recommend a lady after this meeting for a new principal to our county. She's not new to our county, she's from Richwood, and she was so enlightening with her statements yesterday in talking about exposure and being out and living in other states and other countries. And I feel like the more exposure we can give our kids, the better. So, so our kids will have exposure, and getting that exposure in 8th grade is critical. 9th grade is critical, getting them on the right track. So what we have on the last one slide, we did show an entrepreneurship hub. I think that it's going to be important for all of our kids in the county who have special skills that they may learn how to start their own business, write business plans, and hopefully start doing some growth within our county to keep our kids.
That's a question I'm going to ask. Does that include all the CTE classes, the entrepreneur?
The entrepreneurship will be available to students who only have an interest. So if you have someone, for example, that wants to go into nursing, and this student knows, or this student wants to be a doctor, that student may not have an interest in starting his or her own business, versus someone who's out here doing ornate welding may have an interest in setting up a welding shop to do.
So this is a separate.
It will be a program that students can enroll in if they have an interest to help them get started with a business.
So there's so many things that, you know, a business of today requires. That I work with a lot of people actually. They call me and say, hey, I have a business, it's not showing up on Google. When I want to rent this out, and whenever they Google this, it's not showing up. How do I get this to come on there? They have no idea how to do it. So they call me and I'll say, well, you have to go to this website, you have to register your business, and you have to do this. And so you know, nobody wants a Yahoo email address when you're starting your own business. It does not look great to be like, yep, I'm Chris Hanshaw at Yahoo. Yeah, everybody like, what? No, so they don't know how to get their own domain. They don't know how to, they don't know how to make their social media profiles. They don't know how to do all these things that today, whenever I travel, I pull up Google and where am I going to eat? You know what I mean? If you're not on Google, I'll be honest with you, I'm not eating at your place because I don't know it's there. If I'm going to if somebody's going to come and rent a kayak on the lake, if it's not on Google, they're not going to rent them because they don't know it's there. So there's just so many things. So these people coming out, and if they learn to work on small engines, or if they learn auto body repair, and they're like, man, I want to start my own business in my garage, well, they've attained the skills, but that's not going to make them a successful business if they don't know how to market, if they don't know how to put their business out there. So that is super important, and it's needed today in this area.
Yeah, you know, for grant writing, they're going to have to know how to write their own business plans.
So,
they're going to have to know how to file
So
to make a
pretty much
business
every
work.
one of these here, you can start your own business from after you take it and get a certification. But we're just going to try to help them do that if that's their desire. We want to keep them here. Start your business here.
This shows how many teachers that we currently have and need for the different programs.
Is this orientation program both in the 8th and 9th grade?
It's currently in the 9th grade, but I believe it's moving down to the 8th grade.
We're going to keep it in the 9th grade, but we're going to add a visit once a month for 8th graders to come in. So when the school opens, my hope is that in 9th grade we can hit the ground running with students selecting careers and moving forward, and that they truly have that career exploration in the 8th grade versus the 9th grade.
Are they able to take these courses in the 9th grade?
Yes. Yes.
But, so they're getting orientation in the 8th grade, and then you're adding orientation in the 9th grade?
No. Currently they're doing the 9th grade exploration, and we're starting the 8th grade to get them some exposure this year to 1 day a month. And then by the time school opens, we hope to have it evolved to the point that 8th graders are getting the same type of experience that 9th graders are currently getting, and 9th graders move into the full program. Does that make sense? So if you have a student who, the best example I can give is my son. So as a freshman, he was able to start out in the electrical program, and he was able to do welding. So because he started his 9th grade year, he was able to get all 8 classes in for electrical, and he was able to get his 4 classes in for welding, and he was able to come out and sit for his journeyman electrician's license, and he had his welding certifications in GMAW and SMAW. And he's been able to be employable in both fields. So it maximizes the student's opportunities to get certifications versus a student who may only want to go in and try a couple of different areas, which is fine, and get certifications. Or if the student wants to do like the 9 students that we had that just graduated, go into a program and stay the full time and get their associate's degree, they can also do that. But if getting them started earlier is definitely better.
You know, I've been noticing on TV that they're really pushing the career tech. I mean, commercials, I saw one of this last night actually on the local channel when they were promoting, and there was a girl welding, and you know, I mean, that's where we're going.
Well, I think that with this new program and us having the opportunity to present it the way that we are, I wanted to show you, you know, how many staff members we'll need, what type of opportunities, what type of career programs, you know, we're going to have for our students and getting that exposure. And hopefully we can keep these kids here and we can grow in our own community. And
So this representation was really just to show that it's, of course, we're adding a few programs that we don't currently have, so we're going to need a few more staff. I think, of course, all of our current core classes, we don't have to hire any more teachers. We can use the staff that we have. So both schools, we can use the staff that we have. We're not hiring any more teachers for either one. And because of the added programs, we're going to add a total, I think, of what was 7?
7.5.
7.5.
And possibly just 7, but.
So that is not, so the school is not, and that's not that bad.
Now, if our population increases at Nicholas County High School, then we may have to add a teacher for each of the core classes. We may have to add a science, a math, and English. And
Right.
social
I mean, we're
studies.
predicting 90 more students.
So we may have to hire.
That may mean we have to hire another teacher. But like I said, I'll let ZMM go over this floor plan in much more detail than I. But when you're going over it, I don't know if any of you guys have been through Greenbrier East High School. I worked there when I worked at RESA, and it's massive. Like if you wanted to take a class all the way up here, it's going to take you 10 minutes to walk down to band. If your English class was up here, it's massive. So this school is a little bigger than the Cherry River campus. So it is more, but we feel like it's student centered. So if you, as they go through there, when you look at an academy, to where each kid doesn't have to walk 5 different places in the building because English isn't here. Your teal is the middle school. And this is your high school area. So your middle school is confined to here. As you can see, there's no mixing of students again. But so you don't have to walk for 10 minutes to get to English and another 10 minutes to get back to math. When they enter their academy, they're going to be able to take all their core classes there. The only time they're going to have to leave their academy is if they have another elective. Because anybody who's in, you know, if you're in healthcare and you want band, then you're going to have to go to the performing arts. So. Like I said, I'll let ZMM go over the main plan, but I just think about that, how student-centered it is and how we're being most efficient with their time.
And Tracy's presentation at the last board meeting, she was very thorough in how all of the core content subject areas will relate to the skilled areas of each academy.
So,
Okay, I'd like to, if we could take about
yeah, we're done, so if you want to.
a 5-minute recess, and then the architects, you have about 20 minutes after that.
That'd be perfect.
No, we look forward to that. But, I'd like to take about a 5-minute recess. If you have any questions, you talk to people. Give me a second.
We're not allowed to talk.
We're in recess at this time. We're back from recess, and I would like to, before we move on, I'd like to thank the superintendent, Mr. Hanshaw, for a really very thorough presentation this morning. I can tell you that I certainly understand a lot more now, and having been through the process for the last 5 years, but I certainly understand a lot more about, where we're coming from, where we're headed, and how we got to where we are now. And Chris, the numbers were spot on. I appreciate the information there of how you all have calculated student population. So thank you all for that presentation this morning. So at this time, we'll turn it over to Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Campbell from ZMM.
I'll let Chris do most of the talking. I'll chime in when I have.
Thank you.
While he's doing that, I'm going to say, before we get started, our goal is to possibly be out here by 12:30, and if at all possible. Otherwise, we order lunch, and Fred has agreed to, no, I'm sorry.
Well, he did buy a new pair of shoes.
So he does have new shoes, he can't afford it now. He's gonna shake his
Fred has put his foot down.
This abuse has to stop.
But we'll go ahead and get started. Chris, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to bring this for you today. I know this is something everybody's been excited to see. We're going to start at the Cherry River Complex. We'll start there for the Richwood High School, Richwood Middle School, and the Cherry River Elementary School. You saw a little bit of the plan, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail, talk a little bit about the project, show you some things, take a few questions, and then we're going to move on to the Summersville Middle School and Nicholas County High School project. So get you oriented real quick. You've seen this plan before. Cherry River is located here, Riverside Drive located here. The existing Cherry River Elementary School is this kind of outline shape located here, Legion Street. So the new parking lot area, it's not 100% finished because it does not have a top coat of asphalt on it. It just has doesn't have the wearing course, it has the base course. But that layout area is located here. So very similar to what maybe you've seen before, we are doing a circular loop around the rear of the building towards Cherry River. We will have a small water tank, not too small, tank and a pump house building located in the corner of the site here. The bulk of the additions are going to be located here on the northeast corner, on the north side, which is the dining room. Some of the board that you've seen here that shows kind of that lodge feel with the stone and the wood timber. And the large addition here on the west end of the building. A couple things to note on the site. We do have parking on the west side of the building. The main parking here is located in this large area here. There's 135 spaces here. We have 34 spaces located on this side of the building. Handicap parking available on both ends. This is your primary high school entry, possibly middle school as well. I know that's part of the discussion. This would be the elementary school entry on this end of the building. And then this end was originally identified, we could use it as a middle school entry, but primarily this is going to be an activity school entrance. So you have sidewalk that leads you all the way back to this parking lot. Knowing that not all the parking for a high school basketball game or middle school game would fit on this west end of the site. So what we've got is the ability to park here and walk along the river here on the back and enter into this activities entrance. It's important when we go into the plan, the activities entrance will actually keep people from walking all the way through the building. So you can secure the areas after hours. We do have playground areas spread out. We do have pre-K and K playground areas. We have elementary school playground, and we do have an extra area that's set kind of away from the building, but we do have them tight to the building as well. And an outdoor amphitheater area here. We are going to have some space for outdoor dining on the north side of the building. And the nice part about this is to orient you, with that being the river, this is our north face. So we've got nice, good natural light on this end of the building here that doesn't need a lot of shading requirements.
That playground in the lower right, that's historically been a very wet area.
Yeah, so what we are looking at doing is most of that wet area is identified to be here. With a lot of the work that's been recently done here on the site and some of the regrading work on the roadway, we feel that that's going to be improved over time. But we do have a small area here tight to the building that would be identified for that area, that playground.
And we're also improving the drainage on the back side of the school. I'll call it the back side, on this side of the school, because of the, if you notice, a lot of the doors and everything's rusted on this end. That's because all the water is shed into that school. So now all of that will be shed into the drainage ditch and along, we put in a curb or a small wall there to keep a lot of that water off the school.
Yeah, the last time the water was high, there were places where it got into, well, it would have if they sandbagged it, got into the classroom there. on that side.
And part of that, when we are doing this kind of wall here and a lot of additional drainage, go the other way. Touch the screen. I did it, Chris, I'm sorry. All right, sorry about that. So with this wall drainage, right now, this whole area where the modulars are sitting in this portion, that's actually about 10 feet of an elevation difference from what's down here. Part of this would bring all that elevation down so we're not shedding all that water down into a collected area. We're able to flatten this part of it out and get drainage here on this west end of the building and on this south end of the building as well.
Will there be a wall between the lumberyard and the,
Yeah, there is a retaining wall and a fence going on the west end of the property here. We also have a retaining wall here along the Cherry River side of the property, along this driveway, so we can bring that elevation up.
so that'll be in addition to what's there now, is that correct?
Yes, in addition to what's there now.
Okay.
The wall on the, facing the river, it won't be high enough to block the view though.
No. That wall is basically just at the roadway level here. It's basically bringing our earthwork up just to get to that roadway. It's not going to be this tall wall that prevents you
Because you
from
might
seeing.
on the other end there.
Mainly just to get the grade differential, but it won't be a tremendously tall wall to block view.
But you'll have a fence.
But there will be a fence there, yes. Of course, there is a fence
There won't
there
be
now.
any
Sort
open
of.
space in that whole area where the school is. There will be no open space. Well, like
Like a courtyard?
any grassy area or anything like that.
In here?
Right.
No, not inside the building, no.
Not inside that yellow.
No, we've left areas here on the end of the building. We do have areas, we give ourselves a little bit of buffer, which is what's existing there on the street side on Legion Street. And we have identified some play area. It's going to be a little wet here from time to time, but there is the ability to have play.
Can you explain, I think I understand what Mr. Moose is asking, because I've been asked the same question. There's been rumors that it was going to be just these buildings kind of like hooked together and there was going to be open areas in that school. If you could explain that it's one full school
Yes.
complex.
So
There's no,
it is a K-12, but it is all under one roof. It is all one building, one roof. So it's going to get you a little bit oriented here. If you can follow kind of my hands, this is kind of the west end of the existing elementary school as it sits now. This is the multi-purpose room. This area exists currently. It faces Legion Street here. Cherry River is located here. This is kind of the westward end of the upper section of classroom. And this little part right here is your northern classrooms that go out towards the river. That'll get you a little bit oriented on the plan. But it is all under one roof. Now, what we've done to segregate elementary school, middle school, and high school, and we had to be very strategic about, because we're trying to make it so that they're separated, but at the same time, we have to make this plan very flexible. So the concern that you have about incoming classes, maybe one class is really large, that comes in, and maybe elementary needs to expand into 2 classrooms. So there's a couple ways we're able to do that. So color-wise, when you look at this plan, one thing I want to touch on very quickly, the purple areas are more of your elementary school. This kind of greenish teal color is your middle school. The blue is the high school. This kind of tan color is your shared, what we're referring to as shared spaces. So it's not just high school, it's not just middle school, it's going to be shared throughout the entire facility. And then the brown areas that you can see here are more building services. That's your kitchen, mechanical spaces, electrical closets, network closets, and janitor's closet.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
This one area here is we set it up for a health clinic. That's that little pink area in the upper right. That can be standalone clinic there. It also has the ability to have a kind of school clinic on the bottom side where they can do a kind of a sick room. It's kind of a result of COVID. And they actually have a nurse's office in that station as well. So let me kind of walk through the plan real quick so you can kind of see where we are. Main entrance to the elementary school here. This would be elementary admin. You've got elementary classrooms located here, media center in the middle of the building. You've got the multi-purpose room, which right now is their dining, but that is actually going to be multi-purpose room because they'll be able to utilize the dining room up on this part of the building. And you've got pre-K and special needs classrooms located down on this portion of the building here. In the middle school section, we do have some special education spaces kind of centrally located. They can serve, I know that there was a concern about kind of the number of rooms. Those rooms are sized that they can push some of those programs together. They do have the square footage that would be required by state and federal guidelines in those spaces. We do have the middle school kind of spread out in this portion of the building. This is kind of the last addition, is this located on the original building here. We are infilling this area with some additional classroom spaces. And more importantly, the existing kitchen in one of the phases gets converted into a science room because the kitchen will actually be relocated here up towards the Cherry River side. When you get to the high school, we kind of have this corridor that runs through. We've cut a new corridor to allow middle school students to get to the dining room. Elementary school students can kind of cut through to get to the dining room as well. The way that these rooms are oriented, same thing here on the north corridor. When you get to the plan, and it's maybe hard to see on your copy, but like for instance, these rooms here have doors on both sides of the corridor. There's a corridor on each side. Same thing when you get to these here in the middle, they have a door located on each side. The reason for that is that we can, in the school, as enrollment maybe dips, changes, increases from year to year, what it's going to allow is you to have the flexibility to take this room. This room can be high school. If it needs to be, it can flip, and access from this side of the corridor can be middle school. Same thing up here. This can actually let the elementary school expand into these rooms, and then you can flip access to the back corridor and change that to high school, and move this down to middle school if you needed to. So I think it allows you to build the number of spaces that everyone was concerned about, but at the same time it gives you the flexibility in the floor plan to switch and adapt as enrollment may change over time.
Will any of those rooms have the doors that slide across, like say, to divide the classroom, the curtain door or whatever?
Yeah, we have one of the classrooms here to be able to accommodate some varying classroom sizes, which I think, based on what we're seeing in your enrollment, that's going to be a good idea. And it also, from a programmatic standpoint, it'll allow this to serve as one big classroom, or it can be separated into two smaller. But we're only proposing that one. And we do have a vertical folding wall that separates the dining room area. So real quick, let me go into some of the multi-user spaces here. So as you go through the space here, you have the auditorium situated kind of in the middle of the space. The art room and its area is located here. It gets nice north light, looks out towards the river. We have the gymnasium located on this side of the building with public toilets, concessions located adjacent right outside of the gymnasium. Locker room located immediately adjacent to the gymnasium off this corridor. This would be your high school and middle school entrance potentially. This is the admin area for the high school area, and then you have some backstage support areas, and we've got building services coming in this back corner. This entrance here is what I refer to as where you could walk along the river down the back. This is what we're referring to as originally the middle school entrance, but we also acknowledge that needs to be an activities entrance. So what that allows you to do is you can actually close off these corridor doors on this side of the building and actually close this entire area off allow people to come in for an event at the auditorium, an event in the dining room, and an event in the gymnasium without traversing the entire school building.
What's the seating capacity in the auditorium and gymnasium?
Seating capacity in the auditorium, let's say
360.
360 in the auditorium. I'm trying to read that number. Gymnasium capacity is 600.
Okay, now this is gonna sound like a strange question, but where's the flagpole gonna be? Because the superintendent and I have both been about the flagpole. The reason is there's a monument there to a deceased student that was paid for by the student body. And the parents are concerned that that monument continues to have a respective place in the...
I'm actually still monitoring that, and spoke to Rocky yesterday. So it's funny you just mentioned that today. The monument is still located. He's going to move it. I hated to have it moved and put in storage, you know, while all of the construction was going on. But now with the way the wood and everything's thrown about, I think we are going to have to go ahead and pull it up. But what I'm wanting is to have a memorial for the little Sandy boy. His name was Kevin Sandy, I think. Have it put maybe over on the right-hand side. That's something we're going to work with the architect, and possibly the two little boys that we lost this year in the four-wheeler accident. So I would like to have something built in honor of them, and then have additional. So that's something I do have in the works.
Right, okay.
We can locate that anywhere you'd like. That's not.
But I want to make sure it doesn't get damaged, because I get update dates, so I had a picture sent to me yesterday, so that I contacted Rocky, and I'm like, you know, I hate to have it put in storage, but I'm fearful that it's going to get damaged.
Yeah.
Well, see, as far as the flagpole's concerned,
Well, that's where it is, that's why.
okay, well, we can actually, you could have a flagpole on the elementary entrance and one on the high school entrance if you'd like.
Yeah.
That's totally doable, because you have two distinct entrances, two distinct schools.
Yeah. Okay.
Might not be a bad idea.
Well, what about your daily process of intercom? You got 3 schools there, and will the intercom from the high school go all the way into the elementary? How are you going to do that where each
I can
principal
help
can
you
talk
with
to
that.
their school?
Yeah.
I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you answer.
Yeah, sorry.
Because you get mad if I do your part.
That's okay. You can answer it if you want.
No, go ahead.
But they're programmable to where we can make call groups. And so that way we can have a call group for the elementary school, a call group for the middle school, a call group for the high school, but then we could also have a call group for the whole building to do lockdowns and safety things such as that.
You do different bell tones for elementary and little high.
Okay, question number 2, bar drill. That's mandatory by the state, and the principal has to have so many first month. Are the principals going to have to work together on that, or?
Yeah, the building and the fire alarm is going to be for the building as a whole, because it is the safety and protection of all occupants in the building, and it doesn't care whether it's middle school, high school, or elementary school. So the fire drills would have to be coordinated.
Yeah, if you had a fire on one end of the building, everybody's got it.
Everybody's got to go.
So all your fire drills have to be coordinated. There's a lot of things I think that all 3 principals would have to coordinate and mesh together. For instance, the use of the auditorium, all those kind of things.
So you've seen some of the imagery here. We've actually refined it quite a bit, probably since the last time you saw it. So this is the elementary school side. The middle high school side, this entry element is exactly the same. It's on the other end of the building. Very same features, same glass. We are doing the exposed trusses with the stone columns and the piers. We are using the wood look siding with stone base and some stone, and we actually have a lot of brick elements around the corners of the building as well. Just so that you're aware, this section is an addition, and this section is the existing building. So the whole goal is when we're finished with this is we're not only improving the exterior envelope of the building, but we're blending it so it is a new, looks like a new school all around for everyone.
Hopefully increase the energy efficiency of your building by doing this too. Because your
Absolutely.
existing building does not have any insulation in it, I pretty much guarantee that.
Are you able to put out bids yet?
No.
No, not yet.
What's the delay?
So,
Some for bid or?
so we've been talking, we're going to talk through the process here in just a few minutes till we get to that part, and we'll kind of address that aspect of it. So a couple things we're looking at for phasing, and I won't dive into this too long, but what we want to show is we have looked at what the phasing can do. We really kind of look to segregate the construction, consolidate a handful of items. By doing so, we're going to be able to save quite a bit of funds. Obviously, material cost escalation is a big issue right now, so anything we can do to help save money is a step in the right direction. So real quickly, looking at this phasing plan, everything in blue is what we're calling the addition. That's phase 1A. So you're talking roughly, and these are some rough dates at this point. So February 2022 through July 2023. The green there is an addition and renovation. That would be part of the first phase. It's phase 1B. That would start in February of next year, and it would take till about November to complete. Everything in yellow would be the school that would be as it is, usable by the school throughout the entire construction phase that you see in front of you here. Area in red, we cannot get exiting out of those rooms, so we have to close those rooms off, and right now it doesn't make a lot of sense to renovate those as part of the addition. It makes more sense to renovate them as part of the building renovation.
So we would probably bid this as one large project?
Yes.
Even though you're doing like two separate things, or you're actually building, constructing something in blue, all that's new construction,
Yes.
and you got another crew, people in here working on the green, is that right?
Yes, and the thought process is with this work here, some of this is addition and infill, and some of it is renovation work. The thought process, we have to do a fair amount of site work, obviously. With when we would want to bid this work, site conditions may not be the best that time of year, so we want to make sure that we have an ability for a contractor to start working.
Gotcha.
So they may not be able to work on the site, but we can start getting the clock going and getting some work already going, which gets the overall project completed in a shorter time frame. Shorter time frame, less dollars.
Good.
So real quick, you go to the second phase, phase 2. The blue area is still under construction. What we've done now is the green area that was previously here is now completed. So now we're going to basically, this area is still staying as it is in the original condition. You're still having your multipurpose room, you still have your kitchen. You're still being able to have enough classrooms to service the elementary school. They will actually move in some of the renovated areas. We will go ahead and keep this section blocked off, and then the purple area here will actually start renovating as part of phase 2. You're looking at January of 2023 until probably the May, into school of 2023. That area would be renovated, and then the idea is that once that's ready to be occupiable, when you get to that summer, all of this in yellow is now ready for your fall of 2023, and we are only left with what was left of this little tiny area, which was your kitchen, your dining room, and then your pre-K classrooms. These few little rooms here will finish out the renovation there. It's very strategic to make sure we have enough classrooms to keep the building occupiable, that we keep the building safe for all the occupants. We have exiting for everyone there, but we're also giving the contractor a nice area to work in, large area. It gets the cost down. The economy of scale keeps playing into your favor by doing so, versus having them work here and here and here and here. Now we've got everything segregated.
So you're saying that
It's just something that.
at the beginning of the 23, 24 school year, we will have students in the building?
In the yellow.
In the yellow, you'll have this last piece, and this is the multipurpose room and the existing stage area. There's these couple spaces are going to be renovated for some toilets. some special ed spaces. Your pre-K, there's some toilets located there, and a couple of these last interior rooms, especially the kitchen. They'll be the last part of the renovation. Some of the exterior renovation will actually go on as the renovation is occurring in that area. Part of this may actually, we're looking at possibly letting some of the exterior happen with some of this on the front, because that would not impact the students.
So you're saying on here, like November the 23, you were going to finish up the orange section on there, or the tan section on there, right?
Yeah.
So is that when we could look to have all students in the building after that? I mean, these are all theoretical dates, because we got some hoops to jump through with bids and that type of whole thing. We understand that can change these dates. But it'd be after November 23 before we can have all students in the building? Or
You could think about it's a mid-year in 2020, January of 2024. It would be a possibility to do. Based on the number, and this is what we're looking at, I really only have a few classrooms left in this space, and we did that very strategically. You could probably move everybody into that part and do without the small section for a period of half the year. So instead of delaying all the way to a January 2024 full move back in, you could plan on it that 2023 fall. Move everyone back in. They may not be where they need to be right away, but come the Christmas break, you could relocate those folks and everyone starts in January in the classroom where they were intended to be.
Chris, I think it is important that we understand that these dates are really, we'd like to see these happen, but there's the possibility we don't know what the bidding's going to be like, we don't know what the prices are going to be like, and that type of thing.
Well,
So the bidding market right now, 30% price escalation where we stand on most materials across the board. It is coming down, but it's not projected to get all the way back where it was just over the past year. Material availability is still an issue, still a concern for certain pieces of certain items, certain things. So one of the things we want to make sure that Skanska has a great opportunity to go through this, do the cost estimating. Obviously, we've got submissions to you all, the school building authority. We have to go through that process, but we feel that this timeline is reasonable. But I also want to get everybody to understand that right now we're bidding it today versus bidding it January. You may get a completely different price in January that you're going to get today. We also have some time to complete documents to get them ready to bid as well.
You know, once Skanska goes over our phasing and our proposed timeline on dates, they may want to tweak it a little bit. And then this information goes into bid documents. So the contractors know they have a deadline to get this done by certain times. And that hopefully will help with the pricing. I know lately that the pricing most contractors will tell you most materials have stabilized, but they've stabilized high, they haven't stabilized low.
Right.
And I know that, I can give you an example, it was a contractors meeting a couple weeks ago, and the diesel fuel has gone up 270% in 1 year. In 1 year. And that doesn't count steel, and you can't even get bar joists right now. Metal buildings are 9 months out. So there's a lot of things that you just can't get. And with all the COVID money that's out there right now, all your HVAC contractors are taxed. And we're afraid that there's not going to be enough contracting firms to finish a lot of that ESSER money projects that are out there. Because school systems are bidding 3 and 4 school renovations at a time. And when you get 4 or 5 school systems, and there's going to be more than that tax those contractors out there. And most of them will tell you they can't get the workforce. They cannot get labor force at all.
On the contracts, you know, if we contract for a certain price, and then materials drop during that period, will they readjust that bid?
If they drop, no.
But if they raise, they will adjust.
No.
We're telling contractors right now, we've got 3 projects out there, and we've been asked to do change orders for over $1 million on a couple because of cost increases, and we just say no, because the state says no. They're stuck. So the contractor, what they were saying in their meeting a couple weeks ago, they're saying, well, is it worth it for me just to say, forget this, let my bonding company have this job, because I can't finish it, I can't afford it, because they can't get contracts with material suppliers. They cannot get material suppliers to hold their costs at all. So if you're building a building and you have a 200% increase in steel, and you can't get it for 6 months, you're sitting on site, you're wasting your time, because you're racking up your labor costs on site just sitting there, because if you let those guys go, they're going to go somewhere else and work. They're not going to come back to you when you get your funding for your product. So that's the dilemma that they're having right now, the contractors are. So it's a hard problem to have.
I would like to add one thing. Last week in the paper, I noticed where Fayette County has a project for Meadow Bridge, a very small school.
$8 million over.
And it was, they originally thought it would come in at 24 million, and it was $8 million, $7 or $8 million more than what they had anticipated.
We've now been hired to do cost evaluation on that project.
Yeah.
One last quick thing here, because I know there might be some questions, and I'd like to kind of head this off, because we looked at this 3 different ways on phasing. So we're building where the modulars are. And I know that was kind of a question about modulars coming out and when it was going to happen. So we did a phase, and we looked at this building and building this in phases where we were just going to do this area first and then leave the modulars intact, finish this area, gotta quit touching, move into it, and then build this area later after the modulars were gone. So I want to kind of head that off right now and talk that through for a second. That is this is deep foundations. That is a remobilization of the drilling contractor, multiple trade contractors. This area the grade has to be brought down. This area, the grade has to be brought up. So we were actually having to import material to bring the site up. And then when we did this work, all this material had nowhere to go. So this was going to have to be exported off-site. It made more sense to get the modulars out of here and do all of this addition in one piece, which is over a 6-figure savings just on the earthwork part alone. The mobilization cost of the drilling contractor is a $50,000, $60,000 line item just to get them to come back. That's not even to drill. That's just to bring the equipment back. This option gives us also more areas of the interior renovation during some of the bad months where the weather could be an issue. They could be inside. They could have crews inside. It may slow down some of the exterior site work, but it's not going to slow down the process of what's going on in the existing building. So I did want to address that so that everybody did understand. The grade work alone is a 6-figure savings by doing this all in one phase. That's the things we have to look at to offset some of this escalation. So we had to rethink the phasing a little bit.
Can you go ahead with the grade work, or does it have to be bid, and do you project the higher percentage?
I would not split the site work on this job based on its size. There's not enough economy of scale to make that worthwhile, and I think it's going to open us up for some potential for claims and issues during construction of the building construction after some of the site construction, because the site construction is pretty complicated. The contractor has to be very strategic on how they attack this construction because it is a very tight site. There's part of that new parking lot is going to be used for construction laydown and materials, not so much parking. It's going to be more materials for this because there's just no place to put the materials on site. If we did it as a separate site package, we actually hurt our ability to phase and stage some of the materials on site.
In this concept, you actually have one contractor overseeing all work. If you bid separate packages, you have a separate site contractor and a building contractor. If this site contractor delays this building contractor, then you have that conflict. In this scenario, that won't happen because you've got one person driving the bus, so to speak. telling the other contractor, we need you here, we need you doing this, we need you doing that. So this, based on exactly what Chris was saying, the economies of scale work out perfectly, based on this size, to have one person in charge of the entire
All
thing,
package.
not to break it into two
And
pieces.
we're-
It's just too small.
If it were far larger, like the other school, yes, but not in this case.
And we've already got,
And it can also hold you up too, because you've got to get clearance on all that, right? I mean, you have to get your clearance before you can get bids. And since you're doing clearance on the whole thing,
the site clearance is not the issue. The issue will be getting all the approvals, school building authority, whoever has to look at everything before.
DEP is the other one.
DEP.
DEP is running still 3 months behind schedule on reviews.
Also, after having conversations with the principals on the Cherry River site, one of the principals did request that the middle and high school have gender-neutral restrooms as well. So they would
We
intimate
took care of
of that.
What's that?
Gender-neutral
So,
restrooms.
so the high school toilets are identified as here. These are actually gender-neutral individual stall toilets. Same thing on the middle school side here. And the locker rooms are actually set up for individual changing stations and an individual stall, individual toilet rooms inside of the locker room located there.
So both schools will have gender-neutral restrooms so that everyone's privacy and, everyone is respected for their gender preference. And
You do have public restrooms for, especially activities outside of the gym and auditorium located here, and then elementary school is still a group toilet. Can't operate the screen. Can do a bunch of things electronically. So, Summersville Middle School, Nicholas County High School. I lied about the time, didn't I? Sorry, guys. I'll hurry.
What did you say?
Lied about
I'm
the
sorry,
time.
I lied about the time.
That's right, you're back.
What is Skansky's job in all this going on? I think we know some of it.
At this point, it's going to be mostly cost evaluation, evaluation of their schedule, basically confirming the data that they have. The biggest thing is going to be the cost evaluation. We want to make sure that the market will give them the result, give you the result that we're hoping for, as far as overall cost.
Mike, also, don't you all have people on site?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that are monitoring this
Well,
concept.
as the contracts move forward, we will be your on-site observation. We will essentially be your clerk of works.
I tell you, it was our observation of the school that Skanska dealt with down in Virginia. They say that district, and Mike, as I recall, the school you all, we visited down in Virginia, you all saved several hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, just by the constant monitoring of what's going on.
It's all big, it's nothing like this.
And I believe you said they said they finished the project ahead of time.
That's the goal, always the goal. Reduce change orders and finish on time, on schedule, and budget.
So site plan for Nicholas County High School, Summersville Middle School, and the Career Technical Center. So 41 located here, the existing building in the tech park located here. The DO, where the road comes up through here, DOH turnaround, just so you know, is kind of located about where this field house is located, so it gets you kind of oriented. Cemetery was here. Groundbreaking actually took place about right in the middle part of the building, roughly in there. Going through the site, we do have two entrances coming off of 41. This entrance brings you up. You got a large parking area here. We have a bus loop and drop off on the front side. We have a parent drop off here on the side. On the high school part, this would be the high school entry. The middle school entry is here on the east side of the building. We actually have two separate drop off loops for parents and buses located here. Then on the back entrance for the technical center. Am I in your way?
No, this thing.
I have this, I just.
That's
Well, it's
your
not
last
coming out Gus's way.
So
I didn't realize.
basically, the technical center here, so as students are coming from Richwood High School, they would be brought on a bus and delivered in the back entrance located here. That would be more of the technical center side of it on the comprehensive high school. We do have parking along the back areas here. And then we have practice fields, soccer field, football stadium along the field house, aquatic center located here, softball fields on the east side of the building with restrooms and concessions building, baseball and softball athletic facility building with a baseball field. We will have a few site walls on this plan. There will be some site retaining walls that kind of form the site on this end of the building, behind the softball field and around the back of the baseball field. But the vehicular loop will go all the way around the building. We've got space for ROTC and lineman fields out to the north of the building. Courtyard kind of area on either side. Mostly this area we can do some outdoor dining and do some creative things with that space because it's nice, and it also faces out towards the field house and the stadium area there.
Chris, just a second. In earlier discussions, thinking about, I think it was the time we were talking about more like a circular building, you know, that type of thing. And it was anticipated these walls, retaining walls, were going to be rather, has the height of those changed and cost-wise?
So the height of the walls have changed a little bit. There's another factor that's driving the height of those walls, and there's a limits of disturbance. This red line goes all the way around the site, makes up 82 acres. Even though you all own the rest of this property, the FEMA limits of disturbance line is this line here. One of the things that we are looking into, and I know that the discussion is the possibility of moving that line and being able to do work across that line. The ability to be able to work across that line would be a savings of a few $1 million in site walls and things. With the current plan and configuration, we still will have some site walls. Even with the removing of the limits of disturbance line, you will still have some walls, but they start reducing in height. So one of the things that we've done, we've got a mass grading package for this facility ready to go here very soon. We just we're ready to submit, and we can get this thing advertised to bid very soon. It has the provisions that if the limits of disturbance line doesn't change, we have it in the documents to build those walls as planned. If the line is allowed to move and change, we have alternates identified for that work so that those costs could be identified on bid day. And if we don't think the limits of disturbance line would be resolved before this goes to bid, but it would be resolved during construction, we feel that if it was favorable, you would already have the provisions and the cost of what that cost difference would be. At bid time, you will know it before probably the decision on whether moving the LOD line is allowable. So, but you will know what kind of financial constriction that is.
And we'll just tell the contractor to hold that price for however long.
And basically what that's going to allow is some of the material that's being cut down, it's going to allow that to be wasted and graded out in a more natural fashion beyond that line and actually give you more usable land at the end of the day. So it will be beneficial if that LOD line moves from a financial standpoint and for you all as a usable standpoint for the site in the future.
Who has to make that determination? SBA or
No, it's
FEMA.
FEMA?
It's FEMA.
back on the other page, down at the main entrance. What does that look? Is that a pump station?
No, there's a residential structure there now. That is,
That's a brick house, area.
yeah, that's not part of your all's property there.
I thought it was, since it was the same call.
Well, this is where that
Yeah, we
Yeah,
own it, but that's
you own
the
it.
Oh,
house
that's right,
where
that's
the
the
area
house.
back is
Yeah,
located.
right.
Yeah.
And the neighbor's house is the one that's
This is-
shown
That one there.
right there.
That's not on.
That's not.
That's
our
not,
property.
I apologize, I got the two.
Your property ends at this red and black line right
Yep.
there.
You know, to me, this would just make sense, but I know all these other projects that are, you know, that are not 428, but they're throwing extra money in them because of COVID and extra costs and all that. I know they're all, a lot of other, like, infrastructure projects and stuff like that, they are allowing for extra money for that. You would think that by us not being able to, you know, get extra money because we have the 428, that they would take into consideration that that would help us save if they would allow us to use that outside area
Yeah,
that we own anyway.
right, you always try to, what I want to call balance the site with cut and fill, but when the cost comes when you have to take it off-site on a road, to take it off-site. That's because you have to use a different truck, it's a hauling issue, and it's a timely issue. So if we could do that, that would save a lot of money to be, and it would look better too, to be able to waste that cut fill balance on site.
Is there around that cemetery, is there a expanded protection area? I noticed it's in a bigger square.
Yeah, that is the perimeter we can't get into. Around the cemetery is the smaller square.
Right.
I think it's a 50-foot radius around that cemetery that we can't touch. So that's why you'll see that limits of disturbance follow that line. So we're not touching that area. We can't regrade it, we can't do anything to it.
Probably have to build a wall because that's kind of higher than.
Yeah, there's actually a site wall here at the back of the softball fields,
And one,
and then one around this part of the baseball field.
Yeah. Because that elevation climbs pretty fast.
What's the aquatic center?
that's the pool.
A pool?
So building, I'm trying this. Looking at the time. Yeah, so I know I lied. So we looked at this, this is oriented the same way it is on the site plan. So this is the main entrance at the high school. This would be the main entrance at the middle school. This would be the entrance kind of in the career and technical center on the back of the building. Obviously, there's the ability to have additional entrances for activities on either ends here, but let me kind of walk you through the plan. Very similar to the one you saw at Cherry River. The greenish teal color is actually middle school. The blue is the high school. The orange color is the shared areas. Brown is building services like kitchen, mechanical. And even though it's comprehensive high school, I don't want you to think that I don't think it's the same, but I have identified this kind of purplish color for the Career and Technical Center because that's more of the technical high bay spaces in those areas and the associated classrooms that go along with it. So that's why that's differentiated in a little different color.
We have gone from multi-level to one level in the building.
This one is
Still be,
this is two, but it's partial to, not the whole building.
classrooms aren't two,
No.
it's just the CTE area.
So here.
Gymnasium area.
So just this area here in the front, there's a small section of this part of the building that wraps around the gymnasium that would be 2 floors. The rest of this building is all 1 story. So kind of real quickly, your high bay lab spaces with adjacent classrooms, so you have high bay spaces next to classrooms that kind of would be double loaded to feed either program. Administration area here for the career and technical. We do have county food storage, central county food storage included in this building here. This is a teacher planning center. The teachers here will be mobile. There will be some ability to move out throughout. This is a planning center for the teachers. This is more industrial-based space. This is more of a finished bay, but it's still high bay space on this side of the building where you got cosmetology and ProStart catering, the bakery and baking and pastry up on top, and a greenhouse area located here right across from animal science and plant science. Kind of coming down this main corridor here on this main entrance access, you got the entrance to the high school, you've got admin area, high school clinic areas. Then you've got a lecture and gaming arena area here. This lecture hall will seat 200. This area comes down through here. You've got an auditorium that seats 1,000. That was part of the FEMA requirements and the documents for the project. Along here, you've got stage and support areas for dressing rooms. You've got these academies located here. So to give you an example, here's Performing Arts Academy. You've got band and instrument here. You have the ability to enter the main entrance is on this side of the corridor, but you have the ability to exit out the back. This actually will allow band easy access to get to the stage. You can bring choir on the stage. There's ability to use these spaces here. As you move up through here, you'll see these academies, they have associated science rooms, classrooms, math, history. Those rooms are available and they would be double-sided so you can get from academy into each of the space so you don't have to duplicate the number of rooms. Moving across this way, you have the 3 gymnasiums. We've talked about the ability to have these walls be vertical folding so this could be opened up into one large facility.
Why are there 3 gymnasiums when there are only 2 schools?
Well, you need an auxiliary gym. You're allowed to have an auxiliary gymnasium. They refer to it as life skills classroom for practices. The purpose of practice, especially when you've got boys sports, girls sports, middle school sports, high school sports, there is a potential that you're going to have practices during the day all throughout here. That's also going to give you the capability of not sending some of the students home to come back for practice later.
There's 3 gyms between the 2 schools.
I was gonna say, there's 3 schools in there.
Some locker room areas and support areas here, including wrestling space here. Public clinic is actually located here, which is as you're coming up the drive. This section is very visible. It's kind of this pink color located here. As you look at this does give you the ability to flow through the building, but we also, with this middle school entrance here, this is the middle school academies. So you see the academies located here, the individual classrooms that are kind of back to back, adjacent to the space. Middle school has a lecture hall. That was one of the discussions of space that they did not have. That actually seats 120. We have administration for middle school located here. We have some special ed and classroom spaces down this corridor, and then we have a corridor access that comes down this way. This is middle school art. You've got middle school band and music in this location here, and then you've got the access to the gym. What this allows us to do is, this is kind of your high school corridor. This is where all your high school classes are. This is where all your middle school classes are, but we're able to come down the corridor and actually go and access the gym on the middle school side of the building and not necessarily be on the high school side of the building. So we can segregate and separate the two. But we do also know that there's certain programs where you're going to want some blending of that.
Are these gyms big enough that you can have, say like a boys game going on and a girls at the same time?
They are, you do have full-size cross courts, 2 cross courts in each gymnasium for a total of 6 courts layouts. So yes.
I think he's like you're talking about, like if the high school boys have a game, but the middle school girls have a game at the same time, they can
Sure.
both have their games.
Yeah, each of these are the same.
Yeah, just to let you know, the corridor sizes, this is, to put scale to this corridor is 25 feet wide. It has to be that wide to accommodate the number of people in the stands and in the gymnasiums here. But more importantly, these toilets are sized to take care of if those were all fully loaded. So let's just say you had a middle school basketball game, and you had a high school volleyball game, and you had a high school basketball game. Nightmare in scheduling, but you have the facilities to serve it.
Yeah, the concession stand?
Yes, concession stands are located here. We're looking at adding a second one located in here as well.
What I was gonna ask was, did I hear you right, there's gonna be a public clinic, but there's also gonna be a school clinic?
Yes, so we do have school clinics on the middle school side, high school side. It can also serve as a counseling center as well. It's kind of a dual purpose. You got the ability to do social worker, counseling, and have some clinic space. Because some of those positions are, so we understand in some locations are not full-time, all-time positions, so that they have the ability to flex those spaces out.
But you still have your public clinic,
But you still have a public clinic
but you
here.
still have someone that you do that with.
Yeah, okay.
And if you don't, it's located in a position where it can be cut off, but it's also very visible adjacent to where we can have parking, to where somebody could come directly to the clinic without having to come through the building. And it is set up to be standalone.
The hallway down the middle there, is there any reason why in the front it's wider than as you go on?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. With the loaded, this is the dining room, I haven't quite got to this part. Dining room is located here, so middle school dining, high school dining. This is a single kitchen. It's got serving dual lines on the high school side, dual lines on the middle school side, a centralized food prep area, centralized food storage area, so that you can do all your cooking and baking in one central spot and feed these service lines on both sides and keep hot food and cold food constantly going to those lines. These are set up to be 2 lunch periods for each.
I think he was talking about it's wider.
It's why, it's,
So the width,
Is that
let me
because of lobbying
I got
or
distracted. So the reason is we've got a large concentration of students right here in the center of the building. I do have all of this classroom load on this center of the building, and I have this gymnasium load. So if I look, my front entrance has got to maintain a certain percentage of the occupancy whenever we design a building. Front entrance has to represent a certain percentage of the people. If I have to consider these loaded, this full, these have classrooms in it, the width here is really, really wide. So that's why we have the ability to get a lot of other exits out. But as I work down this corridor, my occupant load gets greater and greater and greater. It all adds. It's like pouring water through a funnel. It all is going to collect back into one
So in
spot.
case of an emergency, you had to get people out quick.
So we want this to be the widest thing. This was kind of a nice design feature that we were able to add in there as well, because this needed to be wider than it needs to be wider here. It didn't make sense to make everything this wide all the way here. So that's why it kind of funnels out.
well, see, the way the fire marshal figures this, when you go sit down with him, he figures every space loaded to the max. We know that's never gonna happen, but he figures there's gonna be 1,000 people here, this is gonna be full, every gym seat will be full, every classroom will be full. That's the way he looks at it when he looks at exiting.
And
And
they
it's
look,
just the way we have to
And
figure
you
it.
have the cafeteria divided up the same way as you do at Richwood. It's got a divider in between.
Divider wall.
Opens or closes.
so this is a divider wall in the middle that can fold up, and that can be one large space there.
And the middle school will access their cafeteria from the side, the high school can access it from the front, just so they don't mix out in that big hallway.
And then we do have an access here. We were looking at possibly outdoor dining being associated with that, but we also have a ton of exiting that's got to come direct to the outside.
How much space do we have? You know, when we watch our checking accounts, we're careful, we say, I got this much. How much space do we have? This is projected at what, 130 million? And
I don't know, I know we've got, Skanska hasn't seen this yet. They haven't dived into the budget, but all I know is we've got 177, and we take off X amount for other items. We've got to get all this built for that. And that's what we have to, between Skanska and ZMN, we have to come up with types of materials, how much glass, how much metal, how much stone, how big things are, how tall things are. We have to coordinate all that to make that budget work.
Yeah,
so you're not going to overdraw us?
no.
Okay.
No, so all of these
There's nowhere to
spaces,
get
There's nowhere to
overdrawn.
get overdrawn.
We're not gonna let none.
We've been vetting through all these spaces, and that's one of the things that Chris Hanshaw was referring to, is kind of a comparison of spaces and what they have and what we're kind of moving towards. We're making sure that we have spaces that accommodate your enrollment as it's projected, and that it is going to be usable and not have all these empty rooms. And that's part of the problem that we were really concerned with. So a lot of these have been condensed. As we continue to develop the project, some of these we may realize that we have to push out just a little bit, make it slightly bigger, but we also realize that there's some spaces in here that might be big now that can start to reduce in size. That's part of the next phase, is going through right sizing every single space.
What's the projected finishing date?
What did we look at? We looked at, since we're going, what our goal is to get the site package out to bid, so they could be working on the site, and by spring, summer, they will have a building pad ready. So when we go to bid spring, summer, they can come on and have an immediate building pad to work on. There's no use to, we even if we had this ready today, we would not bid it today. We would wait till we get that building pad almost done before we went to bid.
So you're looking
to save on contractors, you're going to save on pricing, you're going to save on all that. Try to get a building pad ready for us to start.
It's going to take longer than Richwood, obviously, right?
To build this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you were all thinking 24 to 30 months in that ballpark. Yeah. So you would be talking about building construction starting next summer.
This might be a silly question, but the notches along the corridor into the, those are just a design feature, or
Yeah, those
just kind of break up the straight line?
Right.
break up the straight line. What this is in each academy, you've got some storage space that serves the academy, but these are actually going to be kind of a glass little meeting area. It's kind of a collaborative area between students and faculty, open to the corridor, and this is kind of a glass front that'll basically, as you're going through the building, you can actually see what's going on in some of these academies. So it's kind of opening up. With it being a comprehensive school and all the things that are being offered, it doesn't do it any good if you can't see what's going on in there. So that's one of the things we're trying to showcase, what's going on, not just on the high school side, but on the Career and Technical Center side and the middle school side.
It's, for lack of a better term, we want to look at it like a mall entrance. Like you're walking down this big concourse, and you can see activity. You can see people working on cars. You can see welders. You can see all this activity going on to spark maybe interest as you take tours through the building. You take middle schoolers through the building.
Set them back a little bit, separate one area from another.
Right.
Yep.
So when you're talking about the building pad, can you tell me what that is? Can you explain what that is? And can you tell us when we're going to start seeing things actually being built on that site, that we can actually see that
I would
something's
say
happening?
the building pad is an area that is,
The dirt.
it would be this area right here where they want to construct this building. It's not going to be completely flat when they get it, but it will be, has all appearances to be flat. And they can start putting in all the foundations, all the steel, you'll start seeing steel go up. This building,
When will we start seeing that?
I would say, hopefully summer,
Yeah.
mid to late summer of next year. Because we have to bid it, they have to put in the foundations, they have to put in the steel, and they have to have shop drawings for all of that. That has to be sent to us, we approve it, we move on, have to order it, and hopefully by next summer, steel won't be an issue to get. Concrete's not an issue right now, but steel's an issue.
Don't they do like laying the plumbing and all that stuff in
A
before
lot
they start erecting
of
the steel?
underground utilities have to go in, a lot of underground plumbing, they'll be pouring a pad out there, a section at a time. You're looking at a big footprint for a building. So you've got all kinds of things that go on for a few months before you'll see concrete walls go up or metal walls go up.
Yeah, the site package alone, we're looking around, last count was close to 800,000 about 800,000 cubic yards of material being moved. Based on that time frame, you're talking at least 5 to 6 months to get a building pad prepped, and based on where we are in the year, we also have to figure there's going to be some winter downtime. It's just, that's going to be the reality of it.
So you could be constructing this building on a building pad that's complete, and the site contractor could be working on all of this, completing this work. Because he can put in walls and he can do those things while the building contractors are working on it.
And that'll be the phasing for that site plan.
Yeah, and the mass, and let me clarify what the mass grading package is. Mass grading package is coming in here, cutting and filling all of this area in here, balancing the material so we're not taking it off site, we're wasting it here on site. We are setting up measures for stormwater control, erosion and sediment control, and doing some basic gravel of some of these lots. That's all that's in mass grading. It does not develop the fields, it doesn't do the asphalt, it doesn't do the stadiums, it doesn't do the parking. The mass grading is just to get this as a buildable site for site construction, building construction.
Kind of like he's gonna build a house. You go in and get your
So
block ready.
part of the building construction would be these facility buildings around the perimeter. It would be finishing these fields, doing site lighting, doing the lighting for the parking lots, doing the asphalt paving for the lots, and doing some of the utilities. Some of the site utilities will be part of the building package itself. But for the bulk, the stormwater, erosion and sediment control, and the mass moving of dirt is what's in the mass grading package.
I was under the understanding, when you first talked to us about building, that you were going to be working at both sites at the same time. It seems like this site is, even though it's larger, I understand everything you're saying, but I'm getting multiple questions of, when are you going to start doing something at Bladewood? And we need to get that out there because
Well,
That's why we're here today.
so this set of documents is just a couple weeks ready. It's ready to submit for final approval, a couple weeks ready to go bid.
And that includes both entrances from the main highway. Is that-
All the mass grading that has to happen from that property line all the way back.
Everything inside the dotted line, you guys are responsible for.
That's what that document says right there.
Yep.
That's why we'd like to get that out as quick as possible, because we don't want to wait till next year to get the building pad ready. They have to be working on that this fall. But it's, believe it or not, there's 800,000 cubic yards is a lot of earth. It's a lot of earth.
Well, too, if you're moving dirt, it's not like your material costs. I mean,
It's diesel fuels all
yeah,
over.
these are.
Now, how thick of a pad do we have to make to support that building?
You'll probably have a 4 to 5 inch, just a concrete pad, but your foundations would be deep. There's a lot of rock in here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rippable rock that's going to have to come out, so we have to balance that
You want to have
rock,
a solid base.
over excavate and balance the site.
Yeah. There's actually coal in there too.
Yeah, there's a coal seam in it.
Have we already sent a proposal to FEMA to be allowed to go outside?
Not until you guys approve. So after today, if you guys, are you talking about go outside the EA line?
Yes.
The red line?
Uh-huh.
The FEMA does have the request. They've responded. They asked for more information on particulars. Teradon has just completed all of that information. He has it with us, so it will be resubmitted. So hopefully.
You get to buy lunch next time.
I'll take care of it. So just a couple more slides to go here, I promise. So this is the front edge of the building. So here's the main entrance. So what I want you to see is the dark gray is where you're kind of looking down on roof area. The lighter gray is where you're actually looking down into adjacent spaces. So this would be looking down into the gymnasium. This kind of lighter color, it's hard to see on the screen. Yeah, I killed your screen, Chris.
just turned it off.
There you go. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna do that again. So there's an electric stair on the front that you can actually come up. They can actually have classes on that stair as well. We've got the entrepreneur hub here. That actually will look over into this tall corridor space. There is a running track that goes around this gymnasium with some exercise area for additional support for the school.
Was that on the second, it says second floor.
It is.
This is second floor,
That running track's on the second floor?
elevated track, yes. And it will actually come through the higher bay spaces. These spaces are high volume here and here, so that will actually be going through that space.
That's gonna be around the
That-
gymnasium,
that
not
is-
around the classrooms, correct?
This is just around the
Okay.
gymnasium.
That's
Yeah,
what I
that
thought.
will be a two-story open
Yep, this,
area where it's on the track, you can look down into the
Yes.
gym.
You can look down into the gyms, you can look down into the concourse, you can be over here in the exercise and look into the gym, and you can also look from the from the track into the two-story lobby concourse hallway.
And that part of the track goes outside of
And
this.
this is,
this part goes outside.
Is that
That's section.
440 or 880 or you?
It's not quite 400 meters. It's a little shy of 400. 400 meters, just to give you an idea, comes over about here and goes a little bit further out. So it's not quite, but it's mainly for walking, exercise, and running. It's not for like competition track, but mainly for exercise.
But as a high school track coach, that's awesome.
Or
kill him.
or a high school basketball coach, because I'm looking at here, just so you know, so this is the entrepreneur lab. It looks down and you can see that. It will be visible from the front entrance. And this two-story, this is actually multi-story volume space here. This is the lecture and gaming. We've actually got a little bit of a walkway coming across this wide corridor. You can actually see down into that space as well. We do have a roof area, outdoor roof area here, and kind of a gallery area that looks into the two-story entrance space into the auditorium. This is a very nice, very elaborate piece to the building, but it was a product of having to put some of the other spaces up on the floor, and the entrepreneurship lab was just made a lot of sense.
Where's the elevator?
You got two. You got one that goes into the exercise area, and we got one right here. The one right here is actually dual service. Real quick, it's located right here in the corner. This is the lecture hall. This will actually allow me to get to from the first floor, second floor, but it also allows me to get up to the stage level on the lecture hall. If that's going to be used for gaming, and you have the ability to do that, those are set up on the stage. That little elevator will be a front and back elevator. It'll just go up a couple feet and allow somebody to go onto the stage, so that will be handicap accessible.
I think this school is set up for, like, to do some competitions, is that correct? I mean,
Yes, it definitely. We'll be able to host gaming competitions. We will have, you know,
like tournaments. ball
yes,
tournaments.
yeah, I'm hoping that we can attract, you know, different tournaments around the state. And that'll just help our economy here in Pickens County.
I'm gonna walk on the track and not tear the elevator down.
you want somebody to get you up there?
So it'll have 2 running lanes and a walking lane.
Either that, and you can also change directions. The way Marshall does theirs, they have signage, like LED signage that says Thursday it's this direction, Friday you can change direction on it. And you can also do so many meters in length. You can also do that.
Broke your board, Chris.
I don't think the board's really got pictures, Drew.
Don't feel bad.
Oh,
I've lost my image.
You have it anywhere else?
got a
Yes,
little
I
problem.
They messed up on that PowerPoint.
Go back to, can I bring up the bar? I got it on PDF.
He said he lost his image.
He got tired.
Oh, sorry, it's over here.
Oh,
This thing, hold on a minute. I just fixed this thing 2 seconds ago.
it's messed up over here too. It's on the power.
But I mean, it should be duplicated on both screens. 'Cause
Yeah,
that
but-
was not touchscreen.
Come on.
Gus is up here working on you guys.
Any more questions?
Yeah, the next, this page, is that the front
That's
entrance?
the front entrance, that's the
There
high
will
school
be
entrance.
another entrance, similar design?
The middle school entrance will be very similar, it might not be as tall, but it will be very similar to that.
So, I got it back.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good job. So this would be the main high school entrance. As you can see, volume-wise, it is very tall. But because of the size of the school and the approach on the site, it's going to be very evident where the main entrance is located.
It won't be like the one in Virginia we went
We couldn't find that.
Couldn't find the entrance.
That was South Carolina, and we didn't know where to get in the
It's the
building.
same way, yeah.
So to answer one of the questions, so where are we? When are we going to get there? So design process, basically the way this works, is we have a mass grading package. We're ready to get approval to go out to bid. We have to do a submission on that package. Before that can go out, we do have to submit schematics on the building. We do have to have that as conjunction. SBA is going to require that. So we've got, at each phase, we've got the building planning and programming. We're right here at the schematic design submission. We'll have design development and construction and bidding documents. SBA has their requirement list of what has to go in those documents for each submission.
What is their turnaround time? How long do they have to?
Maximum is 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
10 days.
So the next very steps on Cherry River, we want to do the schematic design submission to the SBA. That would be basically the images that you saw, the floor plans, site plan, and then for the Glade Creek project, we've got the site prep, construction, the bidding document set. We've got to do the submission to the SBA, and then we've got the schematic design submission on the building.
So in essence, that's what you're asking us to pass under action items today, is that correct?
It is.
Item A would be the Glade Creek bid package for the site development, which is your mass grading project. And C, approval of the Cherry River schematic design, and D, approval of the Glade Creek site schematic design. Those are under action items. We'll be looking at those after they finish their presentation. Any further questions for these gentlemen?
Get her done.
I want to thank y'all because y'all had to drive in early this morning. I appreciate y'all driving all the way from Huntington, Wayne County, and Charleston. So appreciate y'all driving in. I'm sure we'll be getting to know one another more frequently as time moves along.
As well as I know them.
Yeah, it's like 6 years, 5 years going into this.
I think we're about ready for a divorce.
Probably.
Just kidding.
Look, they don't have hair now.
They did when you started.
They had full heads of hair when I first met them.
Gray, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you all for presenting to us today, and stick around if you don't mind for a few more minutes. I think there might be, I might want to talk to you afterwards briefly, but if you don't mind.
Chris?
The item for today is action items. We've had the presentation on Glade Creek, the bid package, which is here for us today. I guess, Mr. Ferguson, we can look at that if we wanted to, but it just shows you the drawings of how they're going to go about doing the mass grading project. Item C, we've had the design, the site schematic for Cherry River, the project there. And item D, the approval for the Glade Creek site schematic design. Item B, approval of the contract with Apogee for website design and hosting. Mr. Hanshaw, would you care to come up and tell us about that?
Sorry, we took your pen. I took my hand ready, that's okay. So, there is a desire to make a little change in our websites, and Apogee it's just a different hosting company, but it's also a different notification company. So right now we use School Messenger. We have 2 different contracts with School Messenger, and that makes up our notifications because we have our website hosting, and then we also have our notifications. And those 2 contracts, I think they make up about, I'll have to look and see, I think it's about $12,000, $13,000 a year to do that. Apogee, once it's completed, will be about $17,000 a year, so it's a little bit more expensive. But sometimes we don't get the same message out on all of our platforms. And so with this, it allows us to, we'll have a little bit different website design, and it may be a little bit more friendly. And then we'll also be able to post all of our social media sites and do our call outs with one time. So right now, if a principal wants to get information out, they got to go on their website, they got to type it on there. They got to pick up the phone and they got to call and they got to send a call out. They got to go on Twitter, they got to do that. They got to go to Facebook, whatever, do that. And so a lot of times you don't get the same message everywhere. With this software, you get the ability to, one person grabs it, type in your message, it'll do a call out, it posts it to Facebook, posts it to your webpage, and you have the exact same message on all platforms. So the setup cost is a little more, as you can see. It's a one-time cost, but that's non-reoccurring. There's unlimited support with it. We have a sole source letter from the company, and so it did not go to bid.
Any questions for Mr. Hanshaw in regard to the purchase of Apogee for the website design and hosting?
Does that need to go bid?
With the sole source letter, we do not have to bid.
You're sure?
Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Hess.
I just got ready.
What?
You call me Mr. Vance. I said it just got pretty.
It's getting deep. It's getting angry.
I have nothing to say. Okay, action items A, B, C, and D. You have before you. Are there any further questions before we consider these? And I want to make sure you understand. The vote will be for items A, Glade Creek bid package for site development. That's the mass grading project. Approval of the contract with Apogee, and approve the Cherry River site schematic design, and approve Glade Creek site schematic design. Any questions?
Are we doing
Why
all as one
is,
or separate?
okay,
I'm sorry.
is it essential that we approve these schematic designs before anything further can proceed?
I think that's,
Yeah.
this is the next step, is to get these.
We can't proceed with design development until we get approved from the SBA. We are internally taking a risk of doing it, but we can't go to bid or go to anything until we start getting approvals. Because we have to work out the bid dates for the school building.
And we have to approve this before you can send this to SBA, correct?
Should, yes.
Any further questions? So again, we're looking at action items A, B, C, and D. Is there a motion to approve action items A, B, C, and D as have been presented here today?
So moved.
Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mrs. Kaufman seconds. Is there any further discussion in regard to action items A, B, C, or D? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're on the personnel. Mrs. Atkins, I assume there's no need for executive session or anything, right?
No.
Okay.
Okay, you have before you the updated personnel agenda. A copy has been made available to the press, but I will read over it. The changes are highlighted in yellow. Of course, you have the first two positions listed there. For Cody Murphy is the computer systems repair teacher at Nicholas County Career Center, and Kelsey Carr as a biology teacher at Nicholas County High School, and then Rhonda Willie to employ in the position of elementary school principal at Birch River Elementary School effective July 30th, 2021. Under consent, Jay Amick resigns his position as assistant softball coach for Richwood High School effective July 13th, 2021. And Bill Little resigns his position as head softball coach at Richwood High School effective July 21st, 2021.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Atkins in regard to personnel?
Oh yeah, on the second page, there is a leave request. This is for an employee who currently works for us as an aide. She has been pursuing her degree in education, and you approved her for student teaching in our school system for this fall semester, so that she's going to be taking an unpaid leave of absence from her aide position to do her student teaching.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Little has been softball coach over there for several years, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He has.
That's, I know
He's
he's
had some good teams.
done really well over there. Great to see him go. If there are no further questions for Mrs. Atkins, is there a motion to approve personnel as presented this afternoon?
Make the motion.
Mr. Berry moves. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mrs. Kaufman seconds. Any further discussion in regard to the personnel items presented this afternoon? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn this afternoon's meeting?
So moved.
Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Luce seconds the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, we're adjourned at 12:46 p.m.